Alright. You're gonna have to tell me if the audio is absolutely terrible. Right, watching my own stream is probably going to not be a good idea. I had it on the other window to set it up. Well, okay, no, I know the audio is bad. You know, I have a bad mic, I have a bad audio setup, but is it destroying your ears? Or is it, you know, listenable to some extent? It is atrocious. It's not perfect, but bearable is kind of where I was going to what I was going for. Okay, well, thank you for the compliments. Right, well, as long as it's fine, it's fine. But if it's unlistenable, then I need to do something about it. I've tried to, you know, relative to my ability with a Blue Snowball mic, which is what I've been using the entire time that I've been doing YouTube. You know, that's why my audio on YouTube is pretty bad as well, but there I can make it a little bit better by editing the hell out of it, you know, in post. Here I just have basically a limiter to make sure it's not destroying your ears, and some, you know, a noise gate to make sure that the rabble of people outside can't be heard. This is literally the most beautiful audio I've heard in my life. Is there a really distant background conversation? There's like 10 million different background conversations. I live in the middle of the town that I live in, and it's a Saturday and everyone is outside, apart from me. I'm not outside. I'm inside, getting ready to answer questions about my fantasy world. Okay. You can only hear the rabble when I speak. Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I guess that's what the noise gate will do. Unfortunately, it can't really like isolate what things are. Average introvert behavior. Alright, well, you don't need to say that. Where the fuck do I? There we go. So I can actually see the chat on this screen without having to constantly look over. Okay. Does my fantasy world have iron ingots since you stole mine in Blindcraft? That's a very good question. I mean, I do think I do think people indeed have made iron ingots. I'm not really sure what the stealing is that you're referring to. I'm not going to comment on things that may or may not have happened. I'm not going to comment on things that, you know, that you have no proof for, that nobody has any proof for, that nobody really knows exactly what happened with. Anyway, you are welcome to send things into the chat, questions that have that you come up with about anything. But I do have a list of questions here that I haven't curated them. I screenshotted them and put them in a random order, so that I will be answering them. And if you have any further questions, then please do butt in. I'm not going to comment on things that may or may not have happened. Well, okay, Zangloid, my fantasy world definitely didn't happen, so that's clearly in one of the two categories. I'm not going to you know, I'm using this comment to mean, you know, things that are in the realm of uncertainty. What is my exact field of expertise? I do not have an exact field of expertise. I study linguistics at the bachelor level. I'm pretty good at it, I would say. You know, I think I'm pretty good. I think most people would respect that opinion in the department of the university that I'm at. But yes, no, it's general linguistics, allgemeine Sprachwissenschaften. Pizza burger with tuna flavor or no? I'm vegetarian. I do not partake in any such debates. But yeah, no, I don't have an exact area of expertise, which is why my videos are quite diffuse. I'm also trying to figure out what I should do with my life, because I'm quite, you know, I do think academia is what's going to happen to me, whether I like it or not. Um, but I am trying to figure out what exactly I want to carry on with it, and it might very well be the cognitive side of linguistics, the cognitive and experimental side. Who's my other favourite linguistics YouTuber? Kate the Panplate is my other favourite linguistics YouTuber. What's my plan for the next few years? That's quite a personal question. Anatomy. It's quite a personal question. You can't be asking me that. I apologise for the Americanism. That's deeply. This is what talking online does to you. It makes you use Black American phrases in your speech where it otherwise just does not belong. Absolutely not. Well, okay, the person who asked me what my plan is for the next few years is asking me this because that's my girlfriend who wants me to, talk about how we're going to move in together next year. So I guess that's what I'll say. Because she wants clout. She wants clout online. My favourite German word, brackets, so far. I don't know. I don't know if I have a favourite German word. I feel like it's difficult to have. It's very easy to have a favourite word when you're learning a language. I mean, I guess, I am learning German in the sense of, like, you learn something new every day, you never stop learning. But I guess once you get to a point of a language where, like, it is just kind of, I guess, the language I speak the most in my daily life. Like, it's English on YouTube and then German elsewhere. I mean, it's Swedish with my parents. So then it's very difficult to sort of narrow it down. Clyde admits every German word sucks live on stream. No, I love all German words. Or not all of them. I like a lot of German words. Will the people of your world ever discover that they're not real? Well, I mean, I guess there are existentialists in this world, probably, who do believe that the world is a simulation. I mean, I don't think Dycratus is free of fringe philosophies / conspiracy theorists. My favourite word is flauschi, yes. It's my girlfriend's dog. There you go, that's... I mean, it's a proper noun, but I guess it's still a word, and it's obviously comes from flauschig, so... There you go. Alright, well... now that we've got some of the initial questions out of the way, I'm going to... How many languages do I speak? Oh yeah. Maybe I should have just answered that one, because everyone always asks me this, and I think it's actually a very complicated question, because I speak 3 languages fluently, right? English, Swedish, German, and they're all obviously Germanic languages. To answer the next question, but then I think there's different levels of actually being able to speak a language. I can hold a pretty good conversation in French. And I can read French very well. I mean, especially like academic French, although it's actually easier to read academic stuff in my opinion, because a lot of if you're in a subject, then a lot of the words are the same across different languages. So reading the Saussure or someone in French is actually much easier than reading a French literature, even like kids literature or whatever, in my opinion, because we use all the French words anyway when we speak about linguistics in English and German, and so many of the other words just all come from Latin. So, but I'd still say I'm pretty confident in my French ability. I can watch shows in French. I can watch films in French and stuff like that. So I would say I speak French, but I guess most people, I speak French, but as a very clearly as like a third language, sort of non-fluent thing, right? Yeah, guten Nachmittag. Then and then there's like different levels, right? Like, I can also read, but can't really. But I can't communicate at all in Spanish. I mean, like a few phrases. I mean, sometimes when I really, my cousin speaks Spanish, and one time when we were at a New Year's party, I could communicate pretty well with them in Spanish because it was a matter of urgency. But I guess it's kind of like, I mean, if you watch the ads in my videos, which I know most people don't, I don't, so I wouldn't blame you. But it's kind of a running joke that I've never properly learned Spanish, and I should. But it's interesting because there's like different levels of this stuff, you know? Like, I can read a Spanish Wikipedia article very easily. So, I mean, yeah, speak like 3, understand like 20. I mean, maybe not 20, but like 10 maybe is a decent evaluation. Because I can understand like Danish and Norwegian as well very well. I'm not too bad at understanding Dutch either. You know, like, oh, and then yeah, I guess like speak 3 to 4, and then yeah, then there's various caveats and stuff. But I think that I don't think that, like, I think a lot of people are often no, reading Dutch is very easy, as if you speak German and English and Swedish. So, but I do feel like, you know, some people are impressed by this. I don't think anyone in this chat will be impressed by my measly 3 to 4 languages. You know, 3.5. But I think it's actually quite common. I think in a lot of parts of the world it's still very common, and I think through most of human history, in a lot of there's been areas where people have spoken this many languages, and I think the emphasis on sort of fluency is quite a modern thing. I'm not gonna lie. I think it's quite a modern construct from like the 1800s onwards. The idea that, you know, the idea of like how many languages do you speak? What, you know, how many languages do you speak? What languages are you fluent in, etc. I do think those are questions that are asked within a specific context, are asked within a context where you think of languages as something that you speak sort of natively or achieve to assimilate within a certain nation or be able to be in a certain nation. I do think the question is a bit... I'm not saying the question's wrong to ask, I just think it's an interesting question, because I do think it's very, like, how do you say, like, you know, geprägt, like, very... it's, like, deeply influenced by the time which we live in. And Kate, I assume you're American, though, so, I mean, I don't... Okay, like, Americans... I speak more languages than most Americans, and, you know, but I don't really count that. I think that's cheating. And yes, I can say trans rights. Yes, I think I believe in trans rights. Yes. Are you German? No, I'm not German. I live in Germany. My girlfriend is German. I go to university in Germany. I speak German every day. But no, it is my third language. And that's, yeah. You can do it too. Just move somewhere and you will learn. Do I ever struggle with not sounding like a native? No. I don't really care. I think it's fine. When we were in Austria, me and Anna, my girlfriend, I do think people looked at me because, you know, German is such a split language. It's got so many dialects and stuff. And when we were in Austria, I felt like people looked at me like, why are you, you know, what weird dialect is this you're speaking? You know, what weird North German sort of, you know, weirdness are you coming at me with right now? But it's just a Swedish accent. But I think also the Swedish accent is, even the racists aren't really going to discriminate against you that much. So I don't think there's any social... I mean, okay, there's a little bit. Like, sometimes you do start speaking to someone with an accent and they just kind of go, I thought you were white, you know, or like I thought you were native, right? Like obviously I'm still white, but you know what I mean. Like, there are some people who are just blanket xenophobic to anyone and everyone who comes from outside of Germany. But I'm among the immigrants. I'm in a very privileged position, so I don't really feel the social need to get rid of my accent entirely. I do think my German accent is good in the sense that I pronounce everything correctly, just not always natively. But I don't really struggle with the confidence or whatever. I think it's a university city. I think everyone is very nice. Like I'm not the only immigrant around. A lot of people are speaking kind of broken German, and that's it's fine. Would I recommend people moving to Germany? Yeah, I guess. I have a good question for you. Will you set the stream to public? Oh yeah, I just linked it to a bunch of people, and then I forgot to public it. Okay, well, thank you. That's my artist who's there to make sure I stay on topic and don't forget to to finish. Yeah, I started answering questions before it actually published it. It wasn't linked to you, but you got a notification. Well, I don't know. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know how YouTube works. I think YouTube just makes things up. I don't know if I would recommend people moving to Germany. I mean, I know Germany kind of sucks right now. I love Germany, but it does kind of suck right now. Hmm. Yeah, no, you do have to have a legal address. Actually, yeah, it's just it's crazy. No, but yeah, there's a lot of bureaucracy and stuff, and that is I don't think the bureaucracy and stuff is really the issue, though. I think the bureaucracy is mostly funny. I do think though that the political situation in Germany, guys, it's not great. I mean, you guys wanted me to say trans rights earlier. I don't think Friedrich Merz is saying the same. If I'm going to be completely honest, with the Sonderregister, it's not great. It's not great. I do love Germany though. Like I think. I was talking earlier just about the fact that it's all, your state. Wait, what state do you live in? Thüringen or what? Or Sachsen or what? Wait, actually no. Those two both had fucking elections really recently. I'm so stupid. What? I don't want to just like. You can just say what state you live in. Yeah, Sachsen-Anhalt. Sachsen-Anhalt. Yeah. Fucking hell. I'm so sorry. I don't know what else to say. I think it's terrible. I live in West Germany. The AfD is not polling at 40% here, but I still it still kind of makes me want to kill myself. Sorry, not this is YouTube. This is YouTube. I can't say that, but yeah, it's pretty awful. So move to Germany right now? Not sure. It thank you. Yeah, unalive. I don't want to say it though because it's so like painful on the inside. Okay. Is there something? What the fuck is Igelmet? Wait, Igelmet? Is this a German word? What? What are you talking about? Like an eagle? A Met-Eagle? I don't know what this is. What the fuck? Why are you making eagle into fucking food, bro? I mean, I get that you're not actually making it into food, but Germany, what are you doing? I don't want to eat the hedgehogs. I understand that it's pork. But Why? I didn't want to know. Yeah, Anna, I'm glad you didn't tell me about this German food because I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know. What are you guys thinking? What are you thinking? No, that doesn't exist in Dycratus. No. They have every horrible thing imaginable in the world, but they do not have this fucking Met Eagle. I'm vegetarian, alright? This is not... It's none of my business. Jesus Christ. Okay. Right. What was it that people... So yeah, no, that doesn't exist in my fantasy world. And then someone actually asked me something about Dycratus that's interesting. Oh yeah. Are there any drugs? Yes. Yes, there are drugs. There are drugs. No, I don't want to eat a vegan Met Eagle. I don't... Oh, God. Alright. Anyway, there are drugs in Dycratus. There's loads of drugs. You know, they have all the classics. They have all the standards. I'm sorry. I think that noise was loud enough. Are drugs legal in my world? It depends on the time and place you go to and where it is. Who are you and what are you doing in my recommendations? Honestly, if you don't know who I am, I don't know why you clicked on this video or this stream. Hello. I'm a linguistics YouTuber talking about my fantasy world. You know, I think it's quite a niche selection. But you know, if that's something you're interested in, come along. Okay. Yeah, I mean, stick around anyway. I guess maybe you'll find a new interest to have. What would you recommend one to start extensive reading in a language? Do you think it works, or how would you recommend one to start a language? Are you talking about conlanging here, Silanx, or are you talking about learning a language? I don't really understand the question. And then Mattias Jeppesen. I understand this is a Danish name. I'm actually learning Danish at the moment, so I'm not you know, so I'm sorry about the pronunciation. I should be pronouncing it better. I actually don't know how the softie came about, how the bloody came about. I think if I'm not wrong, its distribution is in the same place as a Scandinavian D, right? So I think it's descended from D. I think it's just a softening of the D. I mean, it would also make sense because it's originally an alveolar sound, if I'm not wrong. It's still, you know, it's an alveolar approximant still, to like some extent. I mean, different people pronounce it differently as well. But I think it comes from D. I don't think it... That would be my guess. Look it up. This is probably a very odd question, but is it considered feminine/gay to speak fluent English in Germany/Sweden? Yes. Kind of. Like, yeah, it kind of is. Like, it is manlier to speak broken English. Absolutely. I think so. Not exactly an expert on masculinity, but I would say that. The Old Norse has Ev. Yeah, but the Old Norse has Ev very similarly to where all the Scandinavian languages have D. But you could be right. Maybe it is Ev that Danish has merged less. I mean, the spelling is with D, and I know spelling doesn't mean pronunciation, but sometimes the spelling can give us an indication to the historical way people thought of these phonemes. But I guess they could have just become complementary distribution. But because that's the other thing, though, like it definitely is part of the same phoneme as a D because it's in complementary distribution with it, right? I think you can predict where a soft D is going to be from the position in the word. So it's a difficult question. I would have to do research on it. It's a very interesting question, though. I mean, maybe a possible video topic. I mean, I do think it is a very interesting question. It's feminine to speak good English in England as well. Okay, English men don't speak good English either. All right. What was the other question you had? Yeah, are drugs legal in my worlds? It depends on the time and place. And am I on drugs? No, not currently. Can I pronounce gem? No, I have no clue. Ciao, ciao. Goodbye. Alright. We're going to start looking at some questions here. Oh, wait, actually, I was talking about the Danish. I was talking about the fact that I do Danish. And this reminds me. This reminds me of my Danish teacher, my Danish lessons. This is something that I wanted to talk about, and I felt. Sorry, that was very interesting. But, you know, on the topic of Danish. So this is very interesting because this teacher, right? This is a classic. I think this anecdote. It's not a very interesting anecdote, but I do think it demonstrates a lot of my frustration with being a linguistics nerd as opposed to other kinds of nerds. I mean, I guess a lot of people do have to cope with this. Like, you know, the biology students have to cope with fucking wellness influencers online telling people, you know, or you know, what famous wellness influencers like that RFK guy in America. And you know, I do feel sorry for them that they have to hear this constant bullshit. But I do think with linguistics, you hear such a stream of constant bullshit from people who think they know stuff. Because everyone knows stuff about their own language. And they're not. It's not necessarily wrong. Like, a lot of the time, it's very interesting what intuitions and what ideas people have of their own language. But I'm going to be honest. People do like to bullshit about linguistics a lot. I've done it too. I'm sure at times I've done it too. But I do think that this can be. I do think that this can be irritating. For instance, when this Danish teacher said, what was he said? I was trying to ask this man. This is, I guess, language teachers as well. Language teachers all have sort of done one course in general linguistics that they half remember. And I tried to ask this guy, right, why? If we're saying, now my pronunciation is bad, I've done like 3 lessons so far, right? Like, I can understand Danish pretty okay, but you know, pronouncing it is why I'm there, because I'm trying to get the pronunciation on par. But you know, there's this kind of like, there's this and then there's this like this like this slightly more closed and you have like your word like a hard. Oh, ha. Sorry, because obviously they have a back ha, with like an like an open a, and then they have like a more closed one for like I can't remember a single word now, like it or something, right? Like it et lever or whatever. And I was trying to ask this guy why it is that when you shorten ved, you know, what? Pronunciation bad, I know. Like veil, I can't fucking pronounce it, alright. At the time I actually managed it better. But when you shorten it, it becomes va with an open A. And I was trying to ask this guy why that was, because in other short open A words like yeah, it is this more closed A. And this is a question, you know, that is about, because he's basically presented these two. He hasn't used these words, but as two parts of the same phoneme. Now I looked it up later. It turns out that's very the phoneme analysis for Danish is fucking crazy. It's insane. I mean, they've been working on that stuff for hundreds of years and they still haven't figured it out. You know, the current model has like morphophonemes and phonemes as very distinct. I mean, they are distinct separate things in analyses of other languages as well, but it's like very like prominent things that you have to differentiate. But my point is, this guy was just like, oh, you know, it's an exception, etc., which is the correct answer. It is an exception. But then he was like, it's like, I don't know if you've heard of the philosopher Fernand de Saussure, and it's like, well, yes, I have. I know de Saussure is. He actually postulated that there is no relationship between the orthography and the phonology of a language. And this broke my brain! Someone saying this. Because it's like, firstly, no, that's not what he postulated. He assumes... to be fair, I don't know if he was talking about semiology here or about historical linguistics, but he assumes that there's not a one-to-one relation between orthography and phonology, but he also assumes that orthography can tell us stuff about how the phonology of a real language sounded and especially how the phonemes of a language worked, because otherwise, you know, he wouldn't have been able to do historical linguistics based on languages that were dead. But it's also, this question had nothing to do with orthography. It doesn't have to do with how Danish is written. I'm trying to ask you about the phonology, about whether these two things have separate phonemes. But yes, phoneme analysis in Danish needs a massive amount of research and more synchronic point of view. I would agree with that based on the cursory look at the literature that I had by going on Wikipedia, looking at the papers they cite, and looking at those papers. How do I pronounce blåhaj? The way you pronounce blåhaj. My Germanic philology teacher said only Northern England had a rhotic accent, and it was because of Scandinavian influence. This is what I mean, right? Like a lot of philologists, a lot of language teachers, they have these kind of half knowledge. They have this kind of half knowledge about linguistics. And this is just something that I had to express my frustration about while I had the audience of people who would possibly understand. Okay. There's a lot of questions here. So, does Dycratus have dogs or pets similar to them? Some people have dogs in this world. There are dogs. Some people own them. Where would I live in the world if I had to? Okay, so in the time that I'm currently writing my novel in, that I consider to be sort of the present tense of this world, which is 7,000 years after the stuff that I've put in YouTube videos that's about like old ancient languages, Archipelagian, Mayand, these are ancient languages. I would live in Mayand. I mean, the city of Cernogno is, I mean, it's kind of been destroyed a couple times, but they call it the same thing, or like the equivalent thing in whatever descended language that's like thousands and thousands of years later. There's a very long time span in this world, which kind of makes it awkward because it's very difficult to calc directly onto our world and think how much would a language have changed by then, how much would things have changed, etc. How, you know. But I try not to think about it too much. But basically, but it's a long time. It's a long time. I would live in Cernogno or whatever, because that stuff is it's the imperial core. Sorry, I hate myself for saying that. But it's the sort of the imperialist center of the world, and obviously life there is generally better. It's also better than in Lysiath, just south of that, which is a colonial country, but which has much more like workhouses and shit. So I guess that's where I would live. Do I think learning a language is partly assimilating yourself in a culture? I say not necessarily, but practically yes, because of the way that language interacts with culture in the modern day. It always has, absolutely. But like, language has become such a defining point of nationalism and cultural strength that I do think it is automatically assimilating yourself in a culture in a way that it's not necessarily, a way that it wasn't necessarily, or like I wouldn't, or in a way that I wouldn't just unilaterally assume it always has been throughout history. I'd want to know more. Are there any perspectivist animist cultures? I.e., all living things perceive themselves as humans. Yeah, I know that you were the one who sent me a thing about this, and it was very interesting. I've thought about adding that in, but there's so many cultures that I haven't thought about, and there's so many places and times left with blank, right? That there's so much that I can add. So I guess the answer to almost every question of is there this is yeah. At some point in the history, the very long history of this world, you know, yeah, there's going to be this and that kind of culture. How does magic work in Dycratus? Is it a soft magic system or a hard magic system? I don't actually know what a soft or a hard magic system is. I'm not very into conworlding, like you know, the theory of. So I don't. I'm bad at that kind of stuff. So sorry. Yeah, is there X in the sense of if I've worked on it? The answer is no. I haven't worked on it, but since you sent me the stuff, I've been thinking about implementing it because I thought that would be a very cool thing to add. So I guess there will be X because you know I thought it was a very interesting idea to explore, but I do want to read more about. You know, not that anything in my world is a calc or an allegory one-to-one for anything in our world, but I don't want to be in a situation where I'm, you know, unrealistically representing the way a human belief system could work. Like, I would want to learn more about a system that is so far removed from anything that I've experienced in my life or, you know people who believe in. I would want to do much more research about it first before. But, yes, back to the magic system. So, the way magic works in Dycratus is there's a lot of different forms of magic. So, there's two main... So, okay, it depends how you define magic, firstly. So, you know, I'm going to pull out my document here of Dycratus lore. It's not complete, but, you know, it's as complete as I can deal with for the time being. Yeah, okay. Right, hang on. It's in alphabetical order, so it shouldn't take too long to find, but there's a lot of things on this document. So I have a thing here about magic, under the title Magic. Should be here. Yes. The word magic denotes the use or manipulation of the fundamental forces and powers of Dycratus, typically by musicians. In its strictest sense, it refers to the ability or act of drawing upon the fundamental powers and deliberately altering and manipulating them in order to use them in their altered form. Thus, it refers to the powers of the Tlamontalla and Molannaha, who are the later two cohorts of beings, who are able to create vast and complex systems of magic, utilizing different methods to draw out fundamental powers and creating rules and guidelines to structure, systematize, and regularize the outcomes of these powers. This is, for instance, human magic, or like, you know, solid magic. There's the youngest generation, the 12th generation of beings, is the solid ones, and that's humans are included in that. It's humans and trolls are the two species that have souls, and they kind of operate basically the same. You know, they're just two different species who are biologically, you know, two distinct creatures, but they have the same sort of brain, social structures, magic structures, etc. For instance, Western magic, the most common magic system of the Solid, uses its own special language, where spells are created to form strings of words, so that commonly used spells have the same effect each time that they are used, and so that the effect of new spells, created from new combinations of words, may be predicted with a high degree of certainty. Most magic draws upon power radiated by the Great Crystals, but other fundamental powers may be used with certain spells or magic systems relying solely or partially upon the sun, stars, astrological alignments, the spinning of the earth, the force of gravity, or the force of electromagnetism. However, magic may in some contexts more broadly refer to any power that wields the fundamental forces of Dycratus, thus including the abilities of the Kahentiara and Chantazaria, the first two cohorts of beings. These beings are not able to alter or convert these powers with conscious effort, but may be able to store and redirect them. So, there you go, there's the answer on magic. Denmark better than Sweden. I mean, I'm not gonna get into petty arguments, with Danes. It's okay, they can think what they want to think. How did I come up with the name Dycratus? I don't fucking know. I came up with it when I was 6, 7, 8, something like that. Is Swedish genetically related to? I don't know how to pronounce this language. I'm so sorry. I've seen it written so many times, but I've never found out how to actually write it. Antoana, how to actually say it? Sorry, Antoana. Yes, and I will not elaborate further. Sweden recognises Yiddish as an official minority language. Should other European countries do it too? Yes, yes, if that's what the people there want. I mean, for instance, Jews are not a recognised minority in Germany, and that's not because Germany didn't offer. It's because, it's like Jewish authorities in Germany post World War II, for understandable reasons, didn't want to be a recognised minority. And thus it would be kind of inappropriate to just against their will make Yiddish a minority language, especially because most Jews in Germany don't actually speak Yiddish. They're mostly Russian speakers. Most Jews in Germany nowadays are from Russia, I believe. Descended, from Russia and Ukraine, but Russian speakers. But yes, for some countries, in some circumstances, I think Yiddish should be recognised more as a minority language. I think it should be recognised as a minority language in Israel, for instance. But I also think there's probably more pressing matters for Israel. They should probably recognise Arabic as an official language, or re-recognise Arabic as an official language first. They can do both. They're not mutually exclusive. The difference between hard and soft magic is how clear its rules and way of operating is. Okay, so I guess some of the magic systems in my world have hard rules, and some of them have soft rules, and that's socially determined. It depends on the people who made these magic systems, right? The magic that is, again, talking from the present time, which is way, way, way after the things on the videos that I've made on this. The magic system that is called Western magic, more broadly, in the which is actually mostly used and may end by the time the present rolls around, right? So mostly used in the middle continent. They have very systematic magic, with extremely systematic, they have a language, and then they string words together, and they have kind of made a science out of it in order to regularize the outcomes as much as possible and be pretty certain of what new spells are going to do when you string the same words together. And that kind of system is created through repeated use of the magic and through the social construction of the magic. And this magic system, it focuses a lot on individual power, right? It's got this kind of guild structure of, you train someone in this language, or later, there's also schools and stuff like this, but it's still this kind of idea of you pass down this individual knowledge from teacher to a student. That student becomes competent in this system. They can make breakthroughs. It's kind of like making technological breakthroughs, right? But it's still, but it's still very systematic, right? Those breakthroughs are very systematic, and they are considered sort of similar ways to scientific breakthroughs are considered. We found a new sort of way to do this. We found a new production process. We found a new magic process. We found a new spell. Invented a new spell that has this purpose, that can do this thing. It's very individualistic. It's very strict, but also very predictable. You know, if you do it right, you get the right outcome. It's much easier. You know, obviously some people are talented at certain things through a combination of nature and nurture. You know, that's how it is in the real world as well. You know, some people are talented at being a smith or whatever, and you know, you can't. It's very difficult to separate what nature and nurture does there. Same thing in the magic of Dycratus, but like that stuff matters less. You know, like everyone in Mayend, or not everyone in Mayend, but a lot of people in a country like Lysiath, they're going to have magic classes at school, and they're going to learn to light a candle with magic and stuff like this. Like yeah, not everyone is going to be the best. Not everyone's going to be the most interested in it. Not everyone's going to give the most effort, because it does take a lot of effort. But you can train someone. You can say, this is how you're going to do this spell, and then the spell is going to work for pretty much for anyone, right? This is contrasted with a magic system like Lessin, which is a magic system that they have at the eastern edge of the world, on the hang on, see if I can basically based around writing the truth. Oh, you can't hear me. You couldn't hear me. Can you hear me now? That's because this thing is fucked. Okay. Right, what about now? Can you hear me now? Yes? Yes, you can hear me. Okay. This island here is Huendua. That's what I was trying to say. This island on the eastern coast of the world. This is the Oceanlands. This is the Oceanlands. This is Ottenanen. This is Huendua, the easternmost island, and there are humans who live here. And they have their own magic system that is, in the novel I'm currently writing, very much presented as a contrast to the magic system of Huendua, of not Huendua, of Mayend, or of the West. You assume like using the concept of true names in world building. I'm not really sure what you mean by that. I mean, I know, you know, true names in a lot of Native American myths, also popularized by Ursula Le Guin, right? But I'm not really sure what you mean by it in the context of Dycratus. But basically, these guys, they're using a magic system in the far east, right? That is based around writing. It's extremely socially tied. It's extremely like tied to their society specifically. It's usable specifically with their writing. The writing system is different in the north and the south of this island, quite drastically different. But for the given systems, it is very tied to the specific script. It's tied to the fact that the script is logographic. I don't think you could have this magic system. Well, maybe you could, but nobody has this magic system outside of this island. And what they're doing is magic based around writing truth, which means they gain power by writing about the past accurately, describing the present accurately. They also have all these sorts of ideas, and it's difficult because, this is where it gets very difficult to describe, because this is much more vibes-based. They have much more soft magic in the Far East. In Huendua, they have much more soft magic, and it's very non-individualistic. You have people in a given village, in a given tribe, who have the job of being a writer, which means, writing about the present, the past, building up power, directing that power towards the elders and the people who are more competent at writing, and sort of letting them steer the weather, get good crop yields, etc. This is kind of like the magic of luck, if I'm going to be completely honest, because what you're doing is you're slowly building up a power which you can then use in order to, in the same way as you're describing the past, you then start to describe the future, which allows you to control what will happen. But what you really need in order to control the future very well is you need to make accurate predictions of the future first. And then writers get a sense of this tipping point where they can stop making predictions and start making commands of what's going to happen. And it's very subjective. And if you do that wrong, if one prediction goes wrong, or you've written one thing that's incorrect, the entire magic falls apart. So these magic, they can't last forever. If you curse someone's family, if one person in that family 100 years, 200 years later doesn't follow that curse, right? Like if you've cursed them all to die at 30, if one of these people manages to live to 31, then the curse is forever broken, right? Like the magic is entirely void as soon as one prediction you made or one command you made doesn't work. So the way that magic system works is, firstly, like a much more collective a lot of the time. Like these people are often working together, sitting and writing together in their churches, and trying to amass power. It's a lot less systematic, it's a lot more vibes based. It's much more like, there's a scene in my book in the novel that I'm writing, where there's this guy who uses this magic system. And he has to do so much and suffer so much and write in his own blood and really tire himself out just to open a locked door from, because he's locked in. In Western magic, you could just do a wind spell and the door would fly open. Or if you're skillful, you can do it more subtly and open the lock from the outside. Open the bolts from the outside with like a wind. Like a spell of wind. It's not going to take any more energy than it would have done for a person. Or it will take more energy, but not much more energy than it would do for a person to slide open a lock. It's just that you're doing it from far away. So there is, an additional energy, but that's a spell that requires a lot of skill in Western magic, but not a lot of energy, not a lot of power. And that's this spell is really, really difficult though in Huendua. But what the Huenduans can do that the Western magicians can't is come together and write about how the crop yields are going to be so amazing this year. And it's kind of like luck. It's kind of but it kind of does work. They can increase the crop yield. They can control the weather to an extent, or at least deflect storms that make sure they don't get the harshest part of the storm. The more unrealistic the thing is as well, the more separate it is from how things would have happened otherwise, or the more realistic it is that this thing would just happen, the easier it is to do. So it's easier to sort of deflect part of a storm than to just make that storm stop existing entirely. Western magicians could never do this, They could destroy an entire city, if they gang together and did a bunch of lightning spells or whatever, some bullshit like that. But they can't start. They can't start deciding that there's deciding what the weather's going to be like. They can't start trying to trying to get the weather to conform to what they want it to be. So it's a very different emphasis, and it's a very different type of it's a very different type of magic. With a lot of different social implications. So those are just two of the magic systems. I guess, are those the two most well defined? Possibly the two most well defined. But still, yeah. Is the stream working? Yeah, it is. Sorry, it's just making sure. My on my side it lagged out for a second. The current year in Dycratus, the year at the end of the story, is the year, I think, 25 in the Slatagnan calendar, the fourth Slatagnan age, or the third Western age. Year 25, I think, is where I say that it stops. Is the biology of people of Dycratus any different than real people? Well, there's a lot of different species. I would say, the science of this world is quite different. It's quite different to real world science. Their own physics and stuff like this. Like the fact that one of the fundamental forces is these great crystals does change a lot. Like there's like rivers that would be impossible in our world, but they kind of exist because the great crystals exude this power that propels the water uphill and stuff like this. Like the world's quite different. It's not round. Like, it's not a globe. Like, past those points, it goes on for not forever. It probably is like one face of a very large globe, but there's like the edges of the world, right? They have sort of edge. They have the sort of the edges there. So these Huendoans, they travel outside of the world to go pick some fruit called Menyaten that are there outside of the world. So I would say that the biology, I can't guarantee that it's the same. But I also, humans are humans in my world, but then there's a bunch of other creatures who are not humans. A lot of other, way too many. It's the kind of thing that happens when you've just worked on something for too long, and just too much of my life has been taken up thinking about this. Not too much. I wouldn't say like too much, like I feel bad about doing it, but I mean from the perspective of like a lot of this stuff comes from when I was a kid, and I'm not getting rid of it now, and it's just there, and I now have to just kind of deal with it. I now have to just kind of retroactively be like, how do I power scale these people? So like why haven't these people like destroyed the entire world? Why hasn't this evil force just killed everyone? Why are these people not just like invading this entire continent? Like, if you have a warmongering group of immortal shapeshifters, why are they restricted to like this one fairly small country? No, it's a pretty big country by size. It's a very big country, but it's the stuff that I came up with as a child, and it's the same thing with like a lot of the stuff with the languages that I have to justify it. I made it. It's real. It's canon. How do I make it work? How do I make it functional in some sort of way? And that's the question that I grapple with through most of the creation of Dycratus. But yes. That's the way it is. I think it's yeah. Oh, there we go. Which Slavic language is the most useful in the Big 2025? If you're European, learn Polish. I guess Russian is still the most spoken one, so if you go by that, I guess it's still the most useful. But I don't really. I I don't really know. I think we should give Poland more love. That's what I think as Western Europeans, and you know. I guess I'm not really a Western European. I can't really claim that one, but I grew up in England, so yeah, kind of a Western European. Are the differences between Lower and Upper Sorbian comparable to the differences between Ukrainian and Belarusian? I have no clue. I have absolutely no clue. I don't know. Are the gods in Dycratus tangible, or do they only exist in a mythological context? Well, what a good question. The gods that I spoke about in the Archipelagon video, Giara and Ain, and, you know, all these Zlatagnan gods, they are mythological. I mean, you know, they're a religion. They're the biggest religion in the world. This religion still exists 7,000 years later. This is another issue that I have with the timescaling, is that the timescaling is kind of set because of certain set people who have to live for certain amounts of time, and like, just because I can't like disrespect myself that much, you know, like I've already shortened the time span quite significantly. Like for some reason, you know, when I was younger, I thought that it would be a good idea to just be like, oh yeah, there's like 20,000 years from the first age to the fourth age, and it's like, that is ridiculous. It's absolutely terrible. So just shortening it down to 7,000 years is already quite a big leap. But now I have to think of reasons why there's so much stuff that exists back like 7,000 years ago that still has to exist in the modern day, because they exist in both time periods. So there's stuff like the Great Republic of the Midlands, the country, has to exist in both time periods. So obviously what that means is that there's a revivalist movement 7,000 years later. They call their country the same thing, and they say, oh, this is actually a continuation of this 7,000-year-old country, because, you know, we're also a democracy and we believe in democratic principles, and it's really cool actually that we have this ancient history and we're going to tie ourselves to it. Because I feel like LARPing as if you're an ancient civilization that lived in vaguely the same place thousands and thousands of years ago is a very human instinct. I think humans would do that. So like, I think that one is solved quite well. But there's constant stuff like that. But yes, this religion has lived for 7,000 years. Which, yes, no, that's true, KVD. Plenty of real-world religions would have lived for 7,000 years if the world was older than 5,800 years. That's true. Dycratus is older than the Earth. But yes, this is a major religion, Zlatagnism, and the gods in it are, you know, they're mythological / religious. They could be real, they might not be. There are some creatures that are sometimes described as gods, such as the god of order, the god of chaos, also called the White Wraith, and the Dragon Elder, or the Elder Dragon. You can all laugh, you know, it's like the Ender Dragon from Minecraft, but it's the Elder Dragon. But these creatures, they're more like fixed facts of the world, rather than gods who created it or whatever. They were also... They are younger than the world itself. Even though they're probably, they're several hundreds of millions of years old at least. So they are very old, but there's no like primordial gods who are like canon. Like, there's people who believe in primordial gods, but no, they're not like real tangible. There are no tangible real like primordial gods. Am I religious? No, no, I'm not actually religious. I have a great respect for religion. I like religion a lot. I think religion is very interesting, but I'm not actually religious. Did I know the H in the Rhine and the Thames is just because Europeans were like, maybe it's from Greek, actually? That is an interesting tidbit. That's an interesting little fact. How did I come up with the name K. Klein? Wow. Yeah. Thank you for that question. I'm going to start going through some of the YouTube comment section questions. Fucking hell, I can't believe... Sorry, I'm keeping my own stream open on this window because the thing has frozen now a couple times for me on OBS. Like the chat function. So, what we're gonna say? We're gonna try to put this. Oh yeah, this is a comment from Discord. Actually, this is a question from Discord. Excuse me. Oh wait, hang on. What am I doing? What am I doing? There we go. Here we go. So we can all see the question that I'm answering. This is such intelligent technology. So this is Eric Grönwald, who's now taken over the stream, who's asking, sprechen Sie irgendeine Art von deutschem Dialekt? There's no need to siezen me, we can stay with the informal you. No, not dialect in the strict sense. I know that in German dialectology, dialect and regiolect are often distinguished. As one of my what do you say, Kombinatoren, like one of my classmates told me condescendingly the other day, when I referred colloquially, not in a paper. I hadn't written this. We were just talking, and I was referring to like North German speak as like North German dialect. But it was like, well, actually, it's not actually a dialect, is it? Because it's not one of the original dialects that existed before the invention of Hochdeutsch. And I am aware that distinction is made in German dialectology. So, in that sense, in like the strict sense of the word, no, I don't. In the sense of like, does my speech have like influence from the region that I live in? Yes. I mean, I absolutely have effects from being from the north of Germany. I do, I say 20, as many people do. I might even slip a Tag or a Zug in there if I'm feeling fancy. I think it's the region I live in partially, but it's also that my girlfriend comes from very, very much up north, and when I'm with her family and stuff, they all speak like that, which is great. It's beautiful. It's brilliant. I love it. I think it's brilliant. So yeah, I do have effects from the region I live in, but I guess you could call those regiolectical if you want to be fucking annoying about that. KVD answered PVOHS's question correctly, very accurately in the chat. Yeah, K Klein is just my name, and German does capitalize just all nouns. It doesn't distinguish between proper and what the fuck is it called? Non-proper nouns. Like normal nouns. As an Italian, I'm honestly quite suspicious of terminology when it comes to Italian and German dialectology. Yeah, the terminology is quite similar between these because you have a similar history of a kind of, we'd call it Hochsprache in German, although the etymology of that word in and of itself is quite interesting, but I won't go into that right now. But like having a standardized language. That you refer to the dialects that existed before the standardized language, and then the dialects that exist after it that are like the lingering effects of the previous dialects as that they're often described, or whatever. Yeah, I think the terminology can get quite tricky because there's often like such like sort of regional and sort of regionalist tendencies, and especially in Italy, there's very strong regionalist tendencies, and I think. But there's very strong like regional feeling and even ethnic feeling. Like a lot of people talk about things like, a lot of Low Germans of my generation, they don't use the word ethnicity, but they talk about it almost like like it's an ethnic group, right? Which power to. Like I do not, I'm not commenting on that one way or the other. I'm just observing it. I don't think that's wrong at all. So I do think it's very heated. It's very heated, and like these dialects, especially in Germany, these are dialects that have been often repressed, made to feel lesser than, and like there's also this kind of intergenerational fighting of like, the older people being like, you don't speak real dialect anymore. Your dialect is watered down. It's not real dialect, which puts a lot of younger people in a sort of weird position where they're not really accepted as speaking actual proper Hochdeutsch, but they're also not accepted as speaking their true dialect. So I do think it's a really interesting question. I do understand though in academic contexts distinguishing between dialect and regiolect from a historical perspective when you're describing Italian and German dialectology, because you're talking about like which ones are dialects that existed when you had a previous sort of fan out group, like a dialect continuum, and then the ones that are regiolects that are the modern versions of the standard language. That line is very difficult to draw, but there are some things that are very clearly on one side or the other. Like modern Schleswig-Holstein German, saying Tag instead of Tag, that is very clearly, if we're using these definitions, on the regiolectical side of things, whereas rural Austrian nonsense. Sorry, not. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. I absolutely love the Austrian dialect. It falls much more clearly on the dialect side of that line. So even though there's a lot of weird things in the middle, I do think there are some things that you can definitely categorize in one or the other. Perhaps very few things. Perhaps you do really need to look at the two extremes. But I still understand the academic want to distinguish these two phenomena. That was a very academia specific rant. I'm sorry, I'm looking at my the number of viewers going down. No, I don't actually care that much if the viewers go down. This is not a I'm not doing this for money. Dear K, why are you so cool and awesome? Well, it took a long time, Jamie. It took a long time. It was a very difficult process. In Italy, things were a bit different, but there's not that much emphasis on the before and after. But it's interesting to hear. I have seen it in the description of Italian dialectology being used, but I do wonder if they're applying the German terms into the Italian context, because I do think it makes sense to apply a similar framework. That being said, I don't know that much about Italian dialectology. I actually don't. Not just I don't know that much. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about Italian dialectology. All right, like. Maybe more than a random American if you ask them on the street. Like, I'm aware that there is such a thing as Italian dialectology. But sorry, I don't know why I insulted Americans. I'm sorry. It's just that I insulted Americans earlier as well, so then they've just kind of become the punching bag of the stream. But yeah, no, again, I would just say, don't apologise for that. Well, come on, they're having a hard time. They're having a hard time. Will someone think of the poor Americans? But anyway, yeah, I can't really speak. It's interesting to hear that they are different. I have seen that applied that way once. I think it might make sense to apply it that way. Who knows? Well, yes, Heli, and that's the point. That's why you would distinguish between dialects and regiolects, because in German, it's the same context, right? Germany is also a country that was created, that was formed at the end of the 19th century, towards the end of the 19th century, and similarly had a bunch of different dialects descended from Germanic, right? That would then then led sort of kind of slightly fused, but obviously there were some dialects that were absolutely chosen as the prestige varieties that were the main building blocks. You then create a standard language, and then you have certain and then you have certain regiolectical phenomena afterwards, where standard Italian is spoken differently in different parts of Italy, or standard German is spoken differently in different parts of Germany. Regiolect is not yeah, but regiolect would be something different, right? Regiolect would then be what regiolect would be used to refer to the Okay, so regional Italian. Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, exactly. Sorry, I hadn't read the whole well, I hadn't passed the whole comment. Yeah. No, exactly. So yeah, we would use Regiolect here in Germany for the regional Italian idea, the idea that it's part of the standard language but a regional version. I wouldn't really call Plattdeutsch a dialect of German though. I do think Plattdeutsch is distinct enough and has a distinct enough history that you can't really justify being called the local dialect. I do think that's the local language, if I'm going to be completely honest. Should other German regions do the same? Yes. 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 Is Klein my surname? Yes. What is a language? I'm not answering that question. It's such a difficult question. How long did it take me to perfect my German? I have not perfected my German. How long it takes me to perfect my German is writing a script, sending it to my girlfriend. She goes, no, it's not called Das Status. Sorry, I wouldn't actually make that mistake. That's an exaggeration, but you know what I mean. It's Der Status, and I go, oh, okay, thank you for correcting it, and then my German is perfect. I do speak German fluently. I don't think anyone is going to debate that, apart from maybe my sociology teacher who. I'm kidding. I have no beef with my sociology professor. Yeah, what is a word? Not within the scope of this stream. Absolutely not. Is Tokyo Pono a Regiolect of I'm not answering that question. Yes, it's regional to the Jan Measley Discord server. Maybe slightly off topic, but have your thoughts on spelling reform changed at all since making those videos? I think you asked this earlier, and I actually wanted to answer it, but I didn't. I forgot about this question. The answer is yes, because I don't care anymore. Yeah, I think that's basically the best answer you're going to get. I mean, I could elaborate, but I think that actually just kind of covers it all. I made the earlier videos on my channel are fun explorations of small ideas I had that I wanted to share with a few friends and my parents. And I wanted to synthesize what I would otherwise rant about in quite an unwieldy way into shorter videos with visuals that could show people the things that I was trying to say. They weren't really meant to be viewed by a large amount of people. As you'll hear from every single YouTuber ever. Oh, my early videos, they were not actually supposed to be taken seriously. They were not supposed to be seen. So I didn't care that much then either. But I don't care anymore at all about spelling reform. I just don't really care. All right, the next question here. What, are conlang bloggers still alive? Yes. Can you please make a proper dictionary of Meandgar? Wow, it's interesting that you should ask this, because there is a proper dictionary of Meandgar. Here you go. It's a proper dictionary of Meandgar. It unfortunately does not have all the words. Well, I mean, I guess these are all the words that exist now, because basically a year ago, I don't remember. My girlfriend would have to. I don't think she's in chat right now. She would have to say it because she's the only one of us who remembers anything. That like the times at which things happen in our mutual life. But basically, my computer broke, and everything was gone. And just a month earlier, and I hadn't bothered to fix this, my fucking OneDrive had glitched and everything was wiped from it. And I came back here, I was at my girlfriend's at the time, and I came back here, got my fucking backup drive out, plugged it in to my new computer that I'd bought with my girlfriend, and the backup drive was fucking broken. Like, we tried to restore this shit with, computer experts and stuff. They were like, you can pay 10,000 euros for, like, the super thing that, like, banks do, and we might be able to get some strings of data out. A year ago is correct, thank you, yeah. We might be able to get, like, some strings of data out. So I didn't do that, which means that, like, basically all the material of all my earlier videos is gone. It's just the videos on YouTube themselves that exist. Sorry, short little thing because of the thing Helly said here. I would argue that the German dialects are still associated with low education level. I mean, especially something like Sächsisch is absolutely still associated with low education level. And there are, in my generation, and I guess, I don't know if it's our generation, Gen Z and younger, a lot of revitalization. People are very interested in revitalizing a lot of dialects. Not all, but a lot of them. Which is interesting. But I think, a lot of especially East German dialects are absolutely still looked down upon so much, and it's like there's a genuine economic imperative to stop speaking your dialect. But yes, my point is, the world is shit. It's absolutely terrible. But basically, through the various notes I'd made, a lot of things that were just texts that I'd written with no translation. I had to be like a fucking historical linguist deciphering what these texts would have meant. I was looking at a few where there were translations. I was trying to figure out from context the rest of the things. I reconstructed. This much of the vocabulary of the language based on shit I'd written and the few things that were in my memory, right? So this is how much vocabulary Meandgar has. Officially nowadays. It used to have way more, but this is what we got. This is what we're stuck with. Fortunately, I have in this book all grammar, because I don't conlang, like I conlang on paper, right? I make languages on paper. So all the grammar and stuff is in here and was retained. But that's also the stuff that I remembered anyway, so, the words was really the thing that was a shame. But, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. This is the Meandgar dictionary. Maybe I will expand it but I haven't had the heart to start making new words for things that I know had a word, if that makes sense. Like, there are thousands of words lost. I'm not kidding. Not that, maybe, no, yeah, absolutely, maybe 1,000 words to 2,000 words lost, because there was so much. Because I did, I did so much on it when I was in 6th form, being bored. Like I just did so much. And that's the thing as well, I don't have time to sit and make words, and I don't really have the interest in doing that either, so I guess that's another factor as to why I haven't got further with this. Making words. But I really wanted to make it a speakable language back in 6th form. Which is something that it's just not going to be. Literally some of that vocab comes from random WhatsApp chats. Yep, some of the vocab literally just comes from random things that I'd sent to you, to Anna, being like, oh, this is the sentence I thought of today, Yeah. I could go back to 6th form. Yeah, I don't think so. I think it's a pretty impressive reconstruction, and also, I kind of felt like I got quite a good sense of, I was studying historical linguistics at the time. Or I was doing that was the main course I was doing that term, and I'm not gonna lie, the methods we were talking about in historical linguistics unironically helped me recover my own conlang. So I think that's pretty cool. But yeah. Do I have any advice on creating vocabulary? It's the stuff that sounds good to you. I'm going to be completely honest. It's so subjective. This is the other thing. Like try to stick to a certain phonology. Try to stick to a certain vibe of the words. It's aesthetically pleasing. But honestly, some words in languages are just fucking weird. Like sometimes we just have words that don't feel right with the language. Like some phonotactic rules in English we just know from the existence of one word that allows that rule. Like always remember that grammar and rules were created are created by linguists, are constructs by linguists to describe languages that exist. The languages are the real things. Alright? This is it's very important for conlanging, for linguistics, for everything. German does not have an accusative case or a nominative case. No. Our grammar that we've constructed of German has an accusative and a nominative case. I mean, informally, we obviously, like, linguists obviously say German has an accusative case all the time. Like, obviously. Obviously you say that because you don't want to fucking spend 10 years saying anything in a linguistic context. But, that being said, it is worth to bear in mind, like, philosophically, that, like, these are constructs of linguists, and linguists and language lovers and philologists, and you should always try to, and like when you're conlanging, look at it from that perspective as well. Look at it from the perspective of sentences rather than writing a top-down grammar. I think this is one of the things that makes. I think Meäntikai is a very good conlang. I think Archipelagon's also a pretty good conlang. And I think one of the things that makes them really good, I think the main thing that makes them good in a way that languages that I'd make now would just not be the same as good, is the fact that I wrote novels when I was like 12, 13, etc. and they had loads and loads of sentences of these languages in them. Just like loads of sentences and bullshit. I had quite a good intuitive sense of language and like grammar, I would say. Like, I had to change some things when I went back to properly conlang. But not much. And the thing is, you go, this is what the sentences look like. Now we describe it from that. So I would honestly say start with making sentences. But when conlanging, surely you can't just make up words as your primary goal. Like, won't the grammar just make no sense? Yeah, I would agree with the Sicilian person here. That it depends on your goal. And also it depends if you have a bit of a language intuition. I think people who are bilingual or like multilingual have an easier time getting an intuition for like the fact that there's different sort of registers with different sets of words, and the fact that like a language has a particular flow. But I also think that you are allowed to go back and change stuff. Like, you are allowed to realise, oh, actually, I don't think this fits with... Like, I want this language to basically follow this rule most of the time. Then you are allowed to go back and change stuff. It's your conlang. You don't have to just fucking... stick to whatever you said all the time. But I do think it's fun. I do think it's a fun challenge, and I do think it makes the language better to stick as much as possible. Oh, goodbye, farewell, languagist. I do think it makes it more fun to stick as much as possible to the earlier drafts of a language, because often systematically analysing what you did rather than trying to go from the analysis outwards is going to make a more natural conlang, and also just a more fun one. Yeah, boop, 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 beep, beep, boop. Thank you. This is my girlfriend's conlang. I think she made it to make fun of me, but that's okay. Alright. Why is English? I don't know. Booster Bagel says, "What's your favourite word in any language?" And I again, this is such a hard question. I don't know what my favourite word in a language is. That's actually so mean. This is a real conlang, and you know it. I know. Yes. But I don't know what my favourite word in any language is. Boop beep beep boop. There we go. Why are there so many endings that mark definiteness? This was a question on my video about Archipelagon. And if we look at Archipelagon here, we look at the tables. Hang on, let me switch over. Oh, sorry, I've always got the chat in the wrong place, the most inconvenient spot. If we look here, I'll zoom in a bit. We have these tables, right, for the nominal declension, which is what I was talking about in the video, and you see that the definite endings are different. And this question is actually this is a null ending here, and then you've got all sorts of weird fucking endings. Can you even wait? Where am I? Oh yeah, no, yeah. Sorry, I thought I was doing something wrong there. But like, so why would I do this? Why would I have so many different endings? Well, the answer to that question is, actually, does anyone want to guess? I actually answered this one on the YouTube comment section as well. I just decided to. I just thought it was an interesting enough question to justify. So yeah, you can see the stream in the background of the stream. Brilliant. I was just making sure that the chat hadn't frozen. Does anyone want to guess why these are different? Come on, class, put your hands up. What justification could I have come up with for this? Having seen the monstrosity that my younger self had created. Shits and giggles is not the correct answer. The way I justified this is it looks like tables about Latin. Close. I mean, kind of close though, because the way I justified this is by saying that Proto-Larochetic used to have gender differences. These are originally noun classes, and the noun classes originally, had different declensions based on what gender they were, right? And these were originally, singular and plural classes, similar to the Bantu languages. And then the agreement outside of these, like from adjectives and articles and stuff like this, ended. So functionally, you have no noun classes, and that's also the difference between a noun class and a noun group, right? Because these aren't noun classes anymore, because they don't affect the way the language forms around the words. They don't affect the other parts of the sentence. They're only like internal declension patterns. So you kind of get the leftover of the gender, the fact that you have these articles, because these are originally, just like in the Scandinavian languages, these are originally definite articles, or like, what they called like demonstrative pronouns that were put after the word. Like, this isn't actually what it is, obviously we discussed the sound changes, etc. in the video. But for instance, this could have been repo and then cho. And cho is this or that or the, and then that becomes affixed. Well, it first becomes cliticized, and then it becomes like an affix in a paradigm, right? And just like definite articles in French, le, la, they are distinguished by gender. That But once these are kind of fused, and these were the only once these had already sort of adjoined onto these stems. By the time everything else, all the adjectives, all the other articles, etc., had stopped agreeing based on gender or noun class, you already had this system. So, what you essentially ended up with is just conjugation groups that you can't intuit at all. But that's also why there's some vague semantic groupings in what's, they're both plant type things, sort of. So there's some vague semantic groupings. This one doesn't count. This is actually like an exception that I'm not going to go into. But so similar to classes in what do you call it? The Bantu languages. Plant is my favorite gender. Well, a lot of the time in languages across the world, you do organize plants into a separate gender. Not a lot of the time, but there are languages that do it. That put plant in, or plant-like things, or things from plants into one noun class or noun gender. And yeah, I mean it's a valid way to divide your words. It's more valid than dividing them into male and female. I know they actually don't do that. I made a whole video about the fact that they don't do that. That's not what masculine and feminine means, but in the context of the European languages. But whatever. It's still funny. It's funny. It's a good joke about French. All right. I get that this is a conlang, but as an actual person living in an archipelago, this is too much rules compared to real life archipelago language. I put this comment here for the fun of it. I don't appreciate getting comments like this. It's not funny. It needs to stop. Yeah, I mean, thank you, Sammy. Great comment. I assume that this person is a speaker of Indonesian, maybe a language that I guess is fairly grammatically simple compared to many languages in the world. I don't think that has to do with the fact that it's in an archipelago, though. What is your fullest conlang, so to speak, in terms of vocab? Asks Drumstick. Meandgar, definitely Meandgar. As we've seen, there's a dictionary, which the others don't have, really. Well, I mean, there is an archipelagan dictionary, but it's like 100 words, maybe, max. Tell me everything about Dycratus now. I think that's difficult. What's the major language families / branches? Ooh, there's various ones and various ideas I have for ones that are throughout the time. I mean, the main ones that we've talked about, are the Larocatic family, like Archipelagan, Gerwe, and these languages. And then we have the Elemic languages, which is like Meandgar, Mekayar, etc. Then I know that there is a language group towards the sort of the east, which includes the Huenduan languages, possibly. And it's like a debate about whether or not. Okay, goodbye, Jamie. Goodbye. And there's like a debate about whether or not the Huenduan languages are actually a part of that group, along with the Braketic languages. And it's also like a sort of debate about where the Huenduan people came from when they came over the ocean, etc. Then there's also the Iramana languages, which are what the Zurtach speak. They're not humans, but they have anatomy. Well, they're shapeshifters, but they speak languages that then some humans do speak versions of, and so some humans do speak Iramana languages as well. Yeah. There's like various groups. I know that there's one group that was spoken at one point in the southwestern continent, on the west side of the what's it called? Rigre Makaira, I think. The big wasteland they have in the middle of the continent. It's a magical wasteland. If anything in the geography doesn't make sense, just remember, it's all magical. Hi Klein, what does the K in your name stand for? K. my name. What's my favourite languages within those, I guess Archipelago and Maentgad are the main ones that I've actually made. I mean, there's Lorano as well. Lorano, maybe one day I'll share Lorano. And then I know some things. There's so many languages that I know some things about, that I know some ideas about, that I have some idea of what they're going for, what the vibe is. Any interesting historical, geopolitical events? There's a lot of historical and geopolitical events. It's very difficult to narrow that down. It's very difficult to narrow that down from sort of any interesting ones. The sort of story that I'm writing about now is leading up into the big 9-year war, the War of the Fifth Darkness. So that's a pretty interesting historical event, It's a big war. There's a lot of people on different sides of it for different reasons. There's the darkness. The darkness gets sealed away permanently, hopefully, at the end of it. Top 10 geopolitical events. Number 1, war between... Oh yeah, okay, I'm glad I have KVD who knows about this world, who can narrow this down for me. Okay, maybe the top geopolitical event is the fact that Kristolkien, or Prakinikien, the country, Prakinikien, is at war for like 24,000 years with Dimorlodon. Not active warfare, but they never have a truce until the very end of the War of the Fifth Darkness, right? But for them, the War of the Fifth Darkness is just like another phase of this war that's been going on for so fucking long. Basically, the Kristolkish, that's the Zurtachs. They're the shape-shifting immortals. And they have a big war. Nobody really likes them. They're kind of one of the most disliked races or species in this world. History has been mean to them, and they've kind of been mean to history, a lot of them. But yeah, they had a big war, and they had a big war with the Eosedan, or the elves, who are a creature of like pink antennaed bug people who live in trees with big dragonfly wings, and they're pretty powerful. And those two they went at each other for a very long time, and that was a terrible, very destructive war. They started using the very fundamental powers against each other in very dangerous spells. So the White Wraith, or the God of Order, as I call him in one of my videos, goes, no, we're going to fix the borders now. You guys, stop having war. You're banned from having a war with each other. And they kind of respect this. The Zyrtec don't always respect this. Then they have to go to war against the Wraiths, and the Wraiths are, they actually beat them. And reimpose their rule. But basically, then when humans come along and they wander onto this continent, they start warring with the Zyrtec. They start beefing with them for area. Church bell ring. I do live in Germany. And I live next to a church. Well, not next to a church, but very close to a church. So yeah, this is sorry about that. It does this like 3 times a day, every day. The White Wraith is kind of the UN. Kristolkien is Serbia. I'm not gonna I guess kind of, yes, basically. But the Kristolkish, they don't really want to beef with the UN, with the White Wraith again. So when the humans come along, they defend their territory, and they do a lot of horrible things to the humans as well, because they're kind of like, who are these fucks? The humans wouldn't really be that powerful, but the elves, the Ursadan, I don't know why they're called elves. They've just always been called elves. They're nothing like any elves in any other fantasy world, so I don't think it's very good to actually call them that. But these guys, they're very willing. They want to get back at these immortal Zyrtacs, so they do, by helping the humans out, by supplying them with magic and stuff. And then the White Wraith fixes a border between the humans and the Zyrtacs. And then the humans violate it like 5 years later, and the Zyrtacs are not willing to let this go, and let them have the whole of a territory that was split. And then they're at war about it for 24,000 years. because the Zyrtaks live forever, right? They're not going to forget a grudge. So the Demolish, their lifespans, especially of the ruling classes, increases quite a lot through the fact that they're on this pretty magical continent, and also the upper class have the nobility and aristocracy have their own methods of sustaining their life for longer periods of time. Through drinking the blood of Zyrtaks, for instance. So drinking immortal blood. You can kill immortals, they're not completely immortal. But they're very difficult to kill. This might sound banal. I don't think banal is the right word, but yeah. How did you come up with all of this? It's just years of thinking. I don't know. It comes to me. I don't know. This is just kind of... I don't know, this is what I think of, I guess. Nice to catch this. Love your videos and the stickmen you use with them. The person who makes the stickmen is in the chat right now. You'll never... you won't believe your luck. Okay. Any inspirations when creating the langs or cultures? It's a very good question. I actually don't. I don't know. I guess so. Like, there's constant subconscious inspiration. There's like conscious inspiration from people like Tolkien and Le Guin, of course. But I seldom go, "Ooh, I want something like what Le Guin has." Okay. Don't we all want everything that Le Guin has? But especially with Tolkien, I rarely go, "I want something like Tolkien." But obviously, the inspiration is permanently there from Tolkien and Le Guin are obviously the big ones, but you can't escape the inspirations of all the things that you've read, right? Like, they're obviously part of Dycratus. What's the most interesting clone or part of clone that you've made? I think, I do like Meandgar subordinate case and directional verbs. I think that's interesting. What's the and have you made any pigeons creoles? There are pigeons and creoles in Dycratus, but I haven't designed any of them. Are German artists playing with... Oh, this is not a question about Dycratus actually, but I added this question in because this is a very interesting question. I don't think this person will ever watch this live stream. But this live stream is for nerds who want to hear about Dycratus. But this is a question on my video called The Ithkuil Fallacy. About the redundancy in German in German text, right? The fact that you have both the person conjugation and the personal pronoun and the conjugation by person. Now, this isn't, Latin doesn't have the same sort of redundancy, I guess, because it's not the same thing, because in Latin it was not compulsory to say personal subject pronouns. In German it generally is. However, generally, right, it's not always, especially second person. In some dialects, like in the south, second person disappears all the time. In Austria, when I was in Austria, I noticed this, that people just say hast instead of du hast, or möchtest instead of möchtest du, except they say it in like Austrian accent, of course. So, to an extent, and what's interesting about that, it supports a hypothesis by a linguist called, I think he's called Müller, who wrote a paper about syncretism being the main cause behind prodrop. Well, being the reason why German doesn't have prodrop, and he aligned syncretism very well. So syncretism, where multiple forms of the same word sound the same, and says, German may have complex personal pronoun marking, verb marking, based on person, but there's so many forms that look the same in various situations. Like ich spiel, and spiel the imperative, and ich and er geht and ihr geht, he goes, and and you plural go. And that kind of syncretism means that the system as a whole can't sustain having prodrop. Which is a very interesting point, and it's all the more interesting when you think about the fact that the du form, the second person singular, is the form that's always distinct from all the other forms, so it's interesting that that's the one that disappears. It speaks against this theory, though, that ear also sometimes disappears, which does have syncretism with the third person singular, so, it's not perfect, but it is certainly interesting. What I will say about artists playing with this is that you can't really do it because it's so grammatically ingrained to have the pronoun in the main dialect, and especially that happens in the written language, right? But, people play around with everything. People do play around with everything. It was mainly just the point about syncretism that I wanted to bring in here, because I think it was something that I didn't mention in the original video that I think would have... I'm not saying this question is stupid. It's not a stupid question. I just think that it would have reduced the need to ask this question if I'd clarified that originally. How do I organise my conlang creation or documentation? I write it on paper, and then I have digitalised things on Microsoft Word. Dragon language video when. Curious how you tackle languages spoken by non-humans. Do dragons of Dycratus have a larynx that's similar to human vocal cords, or do they have something else? Also, how do gods work in Dycratus? Are they born from belief, or have they always existed? I think we addressed the gods one earlier. There's mythological gods, like the Zlatagnan gods are just mythological. But there are also some spirits of the Lamentel, who can become dependent on belief from, especially from the solid ones, but from younger beings, if they define their identity as that. So the oldest spirits in the world, there's the three very oldest, who are like the ones that I often refer to as gods, and then there's the Lamentel spirits, the second oldest set of spirits, the second generation of beings. And their existence is tied to their identity, often in association with their names. So they don't really have... Yeah, so this is obviously Le Guin inspired in the terms of how it thinks about the power of names, but it's very different because it shouldn't be confused with like a true name. Because they don't have true names, but rather they are bestowed names, given names, or earned names based on their identities and deeds they do, and these give them power and are forms of power in and of themselves. So having these names is important, and one way you can get a name is through worship, right? Is through being the god of a civilization, and there are those who have done this, but these civilizations have to be a bit more practically minded, Like, Zlatagnism is not this. Although there are theories that Zlatagnan gods were actual, or some of them correspond to actual spirits that actually exist. But, you have to be realistic about your expectations. Like, you can't be asking for eternal life or whatever, but... maybe this spirit can shield you from a storm, and you pray to them, you give them offerings, and they do get a genuine power from that, from the belief of humans. That's one of many, many sources of power that spirits can take, basically by allowing their identity to become a worshipped entity. That means that the worship then gives them power, because that is because they identify with being worshipped. Worship does then give them power. And there are spirits that then, if they've forgotten all their other names and identities, they then become completely dependent on this worship, and if the humans stop worshipping them, then they do kind of fade and become very weak. Can I make a wiki for Dycratus? I have a dictionary. I have an encyclopedia on my computer that has a lot of the things in it. Not all of them, but a lot of them. Do you think having created a conlang would be an advantage for people that consider studying something related to linguistics? Yes, but it's certainly not required. It's not necessary, at all. But everything is an advantage, right? Like speaking multiple languages is an advantage. Like just thinking about language, thinking about language, having that in your mind is just going to be an advantage just to studying linguistics and things related to linguistics. Big up Earthsea. I would like to clarify that there's actually, big up Earthsea, but bear in mind that the names work completely differently to how they do in Earthsea. Alright, just saying. Calm yourself with the Earthsea allegations. Okay, it's obviously inspired by, but I do think it is. It is pretty different. Would it be possible for a mortal to become a spirit? No, but you can learn. Well, okay, I say no, but then no asterisk. You can learn things from them, right? You can learn a lot about the way that they think about truth and use similar forms of power to what they use. And Lessien is, in many ways, the magic form of the Far Eastern island I was talking about. Is kind of, in many ways, a similar type. I mean, it's a very human. It's kind of like it's a very human lens, very human-looking way. A very human way to look at spirit power and try to emulate some of the power of truth and the power of names and stuff like that. But you can emulate a lot of their power, but you can't become a spirit. You can't become a spirit. Mortals can't. No one. Yeah. What question would I ask you? Ooh. I have no clue. How many of you have also created languages or created con worlds? I guess that would be the question I would ask, or fantasy worlds. And while you will type your answers furiously into the chat. So the dragon language is what this was actually about. So the dragons, they do have a language. Let me see if I can find the fucking... Sorry. I did not mean to swear. That was terrible. I don't condone. Entschuldigung. Was denn? Sie kennen das nicht. There we go. Okay, so there is the Dracosperia, as it's called by it's called Drac. Okay, alright, well, some languages are always going to have to be somewhat similar to English by coincidence if there's so many languages, alright. So the Dracosperia, the dragon tongue is the spoken language of the dragons, often referred to as the most difficult language to ever have existed. So, it's unknown how much the Dracosperia has changed since its inception, where it was in the era of dragons, where it was devised by the Elder Dragon, the Council of Barzun, and the first generation of dragon hatchlings. However, it is generally believed that though its vocabulary has expanded, it has not fundamentally changed, as dragons believe words and language to be an intrinsic part of the world around them, which cannot be removed once they have been uttered and defined. This does not mean that things have true names. Again, this is absolutely inspired by Le Guin, but I have to distinguish it because it's, I guess out of pride, but also because I think my twist on it is interesting. I want to take attention. I want to draw attention to my twist on Le Guin's idea of dragon language, right? Which is that this is not to say that these things have true names, but rather that the words themselves are woven into the fabric of reality, and that's what dragons believe, right? Just because they're older than everybody else doesn't mean that they're right. Not older than everybody else. They're younger than the spirits, but. They're older than everybody, all the other people. Much of its vocabulary was created in the era of dragons and era of moonlight through the weavings of the elder dragon Menizario and other spirits, as well as some powerful dragons such as Lazakaran. Dragon words often work on multiple levels of meaning. They are often referred to as having many meanings woven into them. Yeah, they then have back sound, a quiet but distinct sound made at the same time as the main articulation of a word, which is necessary to distinguish certain words from each other. And this is where you get solid, like people who are dragon tongues, people who can speak the dragon language. Well, not people who can speak the dragon language, they're people with the capacity to learn the dragon language. And by learn it, I mean they are physically capable of producing enough sounds because of a biological mutation for their throat. They are physically capable of producing sounds that can well enough imitate the phonemes of dragon language. So yes, dragons do have, I don't know if they have a larynx, but they also have like a mouth structure and physically use their mouth structure to speak. You can imitate that if you have this mutation that allows you to produce this back sound, or this throat sound. That most humans don't. Some trolls have it, some humans have it, and obviously the Zyrtags who are shapeshifters, they can shapeshift to have it. But even if you do, even if you are able to make all the sounds required, that doesn't mean, like, you're still limited to an extremely basic level of the dragon language, because, well, firstly, it's very complex, right? But secondly, dragons can talk about two seemingly contradictory versions of reality at the same time. It is this element of the Dracosperia that means that it is not fully learnable for those who cannot see multiple versions of reality at once, which only the Cahentiara are capable of doing, which is the oldest cohort of beings, the spirits plus dragons plus the Eosudan, the dragonfly people I was talking about earlier. Do I take inspiration from Biblaridion? I love Biblaridion. I'm in a Discord server with Biblaridion. I would never speak ill of Biblaridion, but in a word, no. Not really. As you see, the bells are starting again, or as you hear, the bells are starting again. Can I set up a Discord server for Dycratus? I guess I could, but I don't think many people would want to join it, and I think a lot of the stuff is it would be the nerdiest Discord server ever. I'll think about it. But yeah, you have a world as well. KVD has a world. I do know about this. I know a lot about this world as well. It's very cool, actually. It's very cool. You're here to get inspiration to invent a conlang and a fantasy world. I understand. I see. I don't know. I hope I can provide some sort of inspiration. If you have more specific things, if you want to share anything, I can say my opinion on it if you want. But otherwise, I'm happy to inspire if I can. I guess it's just very weird to hear that, like, oh, I'm here to get inspiration from you. It's just a bit like, well, don't listen to what I have to say. All this stuff is ridiculous. Oh yeah, and then there's just the stuff that I added for the shits and gigs. The Dracosperia has 11 phonemic tones, 186 consonant phonemes. It uses a base 93 numbering system, which has confused scholars all over the world. I added to that sentence, which I guess it would. That's according to one guy. That's according to this guy who studied the language. So maybe it doesn't. Maybe they were just messing with him. But yeah, I mean that stuff is that's just as a joke, really. But I mean, why not? I feel like the dragons they would have stuff like that, and we wouldn't be able to make sense of it, and we'd think it's funny. But like why wouldn't they? They're dragons. What kickstarted my world building idea? What do you mean if no one asks a question, ask us? I have a whole set of questions that I need. I'm getting through. Not I need to get through, but to get through. But as I said, I'm very happy to have comments from your own worlds, and I will happily comment on the things that you've come up with. What kickstarted your world building idea is I guess being a child. I was a child, and then I started making a fantasy world, and now it's been, oh god, how old am I? It's been what, like 15, 16, 17 years, and it's just kind of kept going. What uni am I studying? Yeah, this is another question that I get all the time that I just wanted to address here. I'm never answering this question for obvious fucking reasons. Please stop asking me what uni I go to. No hate to anyone who's asking this. It's fine. Like, you don't have to. Sorry, I'm just looking at the argument happening in the chat. You don't have to feel bad for having asked this question, but like, I'm obviously not going to answer what uni I go to. It's in Germany, and it's in northern Germany. I've obviously said that, and it's in western Germany. So there's like a fairly small quadrant if you wanted to stalk me. I don't go to Berlin. I don't go to Munich. But no, I'm not. I'm not. When we were young, they told us never to give out your fucking name and address on the internet. And now, like, now this is just, the internet has just become a name and address sharing site. So, completely off the, yeah, exactly. I do not study in Berlin. I don't study in Berlin. Why does NG represent the sound it represents? Okay, so I don't know. I don't know the answer to this question. I don't know why I got this question on my Discord server, but someone really thought that I'd be the person to answer this. I think it's because it's originally a sequence N, N, G, where the N assimilates into the G, G, and then the G is eventually dropped, and you can hear in certain dialects of English that people say singing, for instance, where as soon as you get a vowel that comes out, or like a syllable that comes after the sing, so in singing, then the sort of the dropping of the G, if you like, goes away, and you get the sequence singing, and you hear the G again. I know there's English dialects that do that, so I assume that's the way. Why isn't English spelling consistent? Because of a long history of the language. It's a whole historical whole historical thing. Yeah. Meanwhile, ngn in Swedish, yeah, ngn is in regna. I don't know why that's spelled like that. I'm not gonna lie. Curious to know why a and o couldn't be shu. This is about Meandgar. This is about the vowel system in Meandgar. I always forget to move the chat every time. Yeah, so we have here the vowels, the vowels of the Mucarian phonology, which was what I was focusing on in the video I made. And this person is saying, if you want a long, short, sort of analysis, then why not just move this A up to here? Or, vice versa, just call move the A up to here would be perfect. Then you simplify your vowel table. And the reason I included this this fairly banal question, no offense, is because this person is thinking like a linguist. Now you're thinking like a linguist. Your vowel table doesn't look good. Doesn't look aesthetically pleasing. Just merge things and put things in random columns and say that it's actually phonemically something else underlyingly, until you have a nice looking table with a neat set of columns and rows. This is how every linguist thinks, and I don't really have anything more to say about that. Can I tell you more about the writing system? What writing system? are there real-world precedents for your in-universe explanation of why your conlang is the way it is? I'm assuming you're basing your conlang off. Like, has any conlang actually ever succeeded? No, not to this extent. I mean, like, there are conlangs that are now spoken natively, like Esperanto. Esperanto is the main thing. Is the main example of this. So, I guess it's kind of like, imagine if Esperanto was a government program instead of a guy who, like, a nerdy guy. Like, you know, it's possible. I guess the thing is, it's possible to create a conlang that can be that works with human cognition well enough to speak as a native language. That has happened. Esperanto has native speakers. There is no historical precedence, though, for an entirely constructed national language, or like lingua franca for your country. Although, as we discussed earlier with German and Italian, there is a degree of construction with all of these, with a lot of these national languages, especially the European national languages. There is a degree of institutionalized conlanging in the creation of standard German or standard Italian. Ah yes, this one. I'm going to go to the toilet and then I'm going to address the big thing, the secret big thing that I actually wanted to talk about on this stream. Go and have I don't know what it is, a coffee? Is that what you drink? I don't know. Water. I'll get myself water as well. No charge anymore. do you mean now we're in Eastern Germany? What are you talking about? Oh yeah. Yeah, they're from the ideas and feedback. I do. Okay, alright, I don't understand this. I don't pretend. Um. I do not pretend to understand anything that went on in this chat while I was away. But we will now be taking a look at this comment. So, this is going to be a side rant, and it's a prepared side rant. So, what does this person say? It's not just Sam's thoughts about the Haradrim. What video is this about? Oh, it's my Lord of the Rings video where I called Lord of the Rings racist. Kind of. Did I call Lord of the Rings racist? Yes, I did say the word Lord of the Rings is racist, which I'm not sure people can really disagree with. Actually, it's kind of racist. I mean, I love Lord of the Rings. As I say, I think those are the first words in the video. Is that I love Lord of the Rings, and I've not just read Lord of the Rings. I've read The Hobbit. I've read The Silmarillion. I've read The Unfinished Tales. As like all fantasy world makers and enjoyers, I'm obsessed with Tolkien. I've learned since making that video his name is Tolkien and not Tolkien, which did kind of ruin my Tolkien cred a little bit while making the video, but still, my point is, not that I'm the biggest Tolkien fan ever to have existed. You couldn't ask me stuff and I would just know it off the top of my head. I mean, I guess I'd know who Eru was, which is more than most people who've just read or seen Lord of the Rings. I am a nerd. I get it. You don't have to bully me for it. Not that this chat would have any leg to stand on. But yeah, I'm not I don't know everything, right? But, that being said, I do love this stuff, and I'm going to say that caveat again, because people get mad. People got mad at that video. That video has an atrocious like-to-dislike ratio. It's, I think, the worst like-to-dislike ratio on my entire channel. Obviously dislikes are not as common now on YouTube anymore, since they removed the visible dislikes on a video. So, people don't really bother to dislike as much as they used to. But even with that in mind, it's under a 90% ratio, which is really rare, especially on educational. My channel educational, but it's a more educational line. I do think my audience is generally quite left leaning. It's just through what I've cultivated through the videos I've made in the past. I do get that this kind of tapped into a different community, tapped into the more fantasy world, Tolkien loving community, and they are all there to, defend Tolkien, against the wrath of K. Klein. But still, that video is controversial, and to an extent I understand why. I mean, no, I understand fully why, but to an extent I agree with it being controversial. I do accept that it would be controversial to an extent. So, yes, I do call Tolkien racist. Well, I call Lord of the Rings racist. I don't actually call Tolkien racist. I'm not sure, what is it, racism is, I guess it's kind of relative to the time you live in, I guess. I guess it's not really up to me to decide whether Tolkien is a bad guy, or whether he is a racist personally. But I think I think you can do a sort of literary analysis of Lord of the Rings and say, it is racist. But I do think there's some interest. There is reason, and this is why I pulled up this comment first, because the comment here is, it's not just Sam's thoughts about the Haradrim. When the fighting is over, Aragorn just lets them go home. No killing, no punishment. I'm not sure whether the Haradrim are brown or black. They seem vaguely Indian. Ganburi Gun is vaguely African. He's described as ugly, but he's smart, shares crucial knowledge, and deserves rights. I'm glad he deserves rights. Yeah, that's good. But these are interesting points, and this is kind of what does interest me about Lord of the Rings. This is precisely what interests me about it, is that there are these contradictions. Because Lord of the Rings is a story about the peoples of the world putting their differences aside and coming together to fight a greater, more existential evil, and becoming closer through it. And, you know, like the whole thing with Legolas and Gimli, you know, overcoming prejudice that they have against each other. Gan Buddy Gan is another really great example of this, right? Like, you need to use the knowledge of the various peoples, you know, you need to set aside your prejudice, or, you know, not just set aside, but embrace other cultures and other peoples. And this, absolutely, this is not, I do not think that this is like incorrect. An incorrect analysis of Lord of the Rings. I think that's absolutely in the text and subtext, 100%. It's just interesting that there's also a racist subtext as well, simultaneously. Because, you know, I'm not saying this is how Tolkien intended it. I don't think it is. But you could also make a reasonable analysis and say, Gan Buddy Gan, you know, yes, he is the good ethnic minority, kind of. You know, he's the good one, right? And his people, they stand on the right side, but, you know, and I'm not going to say that anyone is allegorical to anything, because, as people pointed out, Tolkien hates allegory, and yes, I don't think people know what allegory is. I think we'll get to a comment about that later. So, but still, you know, you have this kind of model minority almost, or the minority who is able to see the greater evil, and they are still one who lives behind the borders of the Western lands, and you could read Lord of the Rings as a story of the white Europeans putting their differences aside. Again, I know that it's not intentional allegory, but you should still... We're talking about Lord of the Rings. We're talking about my Lord of the Rings is racist video. My Lord of the Rings is racist in an interesting way video. But you could see it as, you know, the Europeans are gathering together, the white people are gathering together in the West, and putting their differences aside to fight the greater evil, of which are the hordes that are coming out of the East and South. And they're black and dark, and then you have white on the other side, and there is this kind of racial subtext to it as well. And I don't think you can just ignore that by just looking at Gan Buddy Gan. I don't think you can. I don't think it's good enough. I don't think it's good, you know, not in a moral sense, but from an analytical standpoint, I don't think it's good enough to get rid of that analysis. I don't think it's good enough to expel that analysis from the text, or that subtext from the text, sorry. And again, when the fighting is over, Aragorn just lets them go home. Okay, I think this speaks to something that I was talking about in the video. So, what we're going to do is we're going to watch this video together. Alright? We're going to rewatch the Lord of the Rings video that I made, because for a very long time... We're going to watch it at 2x speed, obviously. Don't worry. For a very long time, I thought that this was kind of a mediocre video. I thought this was kind of bad, maybe even. Because the first person I watched it with was a friend here in Germany. And I'm not saying anything bad about them, but I don't think they're that interested in this. It's not, you know, like I did, you know, I happened to be hanging out with them when I was releasing it, and you know, I did my sort of watch through it to make sure nothing is blatantly wrong and stupid. But I checked Discord. Why? Is pineapple on pizza a crime or kind of good? It's a crime against my personal taste buds. Personally, you know, I'm not going to answer for 5 minutes. I have nothing more to say about this. More to say about this than I don't care if you put pineapple on your pizza. You can do whatever you want. I personally think it's disgusting. But okay, so sorry. When I watched this video, for the first time, they weren't very interested. They also have ADHD, so maybe they just weren't really concentrating. I'm not gonna say anything. But I, because of that being like, and then I never rewatched it, and I just kind of felt like, it's just, I don't think I really, because also the comments were just, a lot of them were very negative, and you put more focus on the negative comments than the positive comments, and it's like, I feel like I must have said something wrong in this video. I feel like this video, it just doesn't, like it wasn't morally bad enough to take it down. Like, I don't think there was anything morally wrong with it. But I was so like up in arms defending this video all the time. That I was like, well, maybe it's just not that defensible. Like, I think there are some things that, I don't think you should be racist in this comment section, but whatever. The point is, I didn't think it'd be good. However, I rewatched it recently, which is what actually, I rewatched it a couple days ago, and I realised, actually, it's much better than I remember it, and actually, I kind of think that the analysis in it is very good. So, we're going to watch it together now, at 2x speed. Hopefully we don't get any ads. You get ads on your own fucking videos for some reason. Can you hear the desktop audio? I guess that's the main question, right? I'm going to have to put the desktop audio on and probably put headphones on. I just realised, because otherwise you're going to hear a terrible echo the whole time. I apologise. My terrible lack of organisation. Okay. Yeah, it's going to take a second to connect as well, because this is terrible. Alright. Tell me if you can't hear. Maybe not 2x speed. Maybe we can stick with 175. Can you hear? No! Can't hear? You can't hear anything? Brilliant. Okay. You can't hear anything. Can you hear me? Okay, well, you can hear me still. Alright. Well, it's not playing right now. It's not playing right now. You can't hear the... Okay, right. What about now? No. Hang on. Why is this not working? Oh, I know why it's not working. I actually know exactly why it's not working. Okay.
I love Lord of the Rings. Seriously, it's amazing. In between the page-long run-on sentences and detailed descriptions of Mordor's shrubbery, we have the definitive epic tale of the modern age and one of the most influential and thoughtful fantasy novels in the history of the genre. With this series and his earlier work, The Hobbit, Tolkien becomes almost the definition.
Oh yeah, I also need to note that for this time period, I had a fucking rhotic accent whenever I recorded on YouTube. Not outside of YouTube, but when I recorded YouTube videos, it slipped in. Okay, maybe a little bit slipped in as well when I was outside of YouTube. Basically, this was when I'd recently moved to Germany, and many of you might have noticed this, that my accent became fucking rhotic for some reason. Actually, I can guess the reason. Because, basically, I wasn't speaking English very much anymore, but It's a bit fast, right? Well, we'll put it down. We'll put it down to 1.5. Basically, when I was now, having gotten better at German has also made me better at separating the two spheres from each other. And the thing is, at that time, I think I was linguistically confused. It was a linguistically confusing period of my life. And also, the times I was speaking English, most of the time was with my Mitbewohner, my flatmate, who does not speak German. Well, I mean, he speaks, functional, mit Karte bitte, schönen Tag noch, that kind of German. Wie viel kostet? But he doesn't speak. We speak to each other in English. He's from Nepal. He speaks English very well. I mean, he speaks. It feels like condescending to say he speaks English very well. Like he speaks, It's not just that he speaks English fluently. Like even though it's his, I think it's his third language after his home language and Nepali. He speaks this language like a. He's like fluent, right? However, his English is fucking weird. It's a weird, weird combination of like British, American, and Indian English, I would say. So I wasn't getting any sort of refresher in English from him. And then there were still people who I was speaking to in German people who I was speaking to in English, because they cared more about practicing their English than I did about practicing my I needed to practice my German, but it was like my German wasn't quite there yet, and my English, I didn't have that confidence that you get to go, no, we're not fucking practicing English, alright, I need to speak German, we're in Germany. So there were some friends that I had that I was speaking English to, and Germans, when they speak English, they roticize all their R's because they hear American English, and also because from the influence from German, because they want everything to, they want to say every sound. So they're saying German because they want every sound to be said, and also obviously because American English is the dominant thing in media, etc. So this didn't happen when I called my brother, but when I sat down to record and tried to sort of put on a voice, tried to remember how does a YouTuber voice sound, it came out like this shit. That is painful, and that is painful for me to hear. That is painful to hear. It's very painful. So we're all gonna have to sit through it. Know that I'm suffering more than you are. I guess that's the only message of comfort I can give you. Also, that's a question. That's another question answered that I've got many, many times. So, what YouTubers did I watch? It wasn't that I was watching the wrong YouTubers. I wasn't really watching YouTube very much. I was stressed out. I was just in a really weird space, linguistically speaking. I was finding it very difficult to maintain my to maintain the English being normal, to maintain it as separate from German, because it wasn't just that I was speaking English with Germans. Some Germans I was just speaking German with, some I was speaking English, but the ones that I was speaking English with, it was Denglish, right? It was a constant mixture of German and English words, because German was still the language of instruction, right? Still the language of at uni, and the language I was writing in and stuff, and it was a constant mixture, constant code switching. Now that I just speak German every day, I just speak German to everyone, including to the friends I used to speak English to, I just speak German. It's actually made my English better, because they're just more separate now, and my English is sort of back to normal, back to the way it was growing up, I guess. Guten Abend. And my German's gotten much better as well, obviously, but I just mean I've managed to keep them more separate now. But yes. sorry, we got 20 seconds in, and it's very painful. It's extremely painful to me.
The only person in the English language who even comes close, in my opinion, is Ursula Le Guin, and she's probably, like, my favourite author ever. And even though I'd argue she redefined the genre, Le Guin is herself clearly inspired by and commenting on Tolkien, like everyone is. All this to say, I like this guy's writing. I'm not trying to posthumously cancel JRR, but, you know,
I'm not.
Men of the West are white, beautiful, strong, great leaders who have to fight against the dark-skinned elephant-riding Southerners who literally ally themselves with the Dark Lord of Evil, and, like, let's talk about that. I think at first glance there's a very simple analysis to be had here, that the world of Lord of the Rings is one of good and evil, often represented by white and black. The central conflict revolves around the war between Gondor and Mordor.
You've got to be fucking kidding me. You've got to be absolutely fucking kidding me. Jesus Christ.
The of these is controlled by the Dark Lord.
It's my own video.
Mordor itself means the land of shadow, the Nazgul dress in black. Meanwhile, Gondor's coat of arms bears the white tree. Its capital, Minas Tirith, is centered around the white tower. This is classic symbolism, right? The duality between light and darkness, good and evil, and this dualism is here extended to the people. We see the difference between white and black people, those who stand against the Dark Lord, and those who stand with him. Black people are bad and or easily manipulated by
Don't
power,
clip that. Someone did clip that and make the YouTube short out of me just saying that section. Do you think I have money? Do you think I get money from... Do you think YouTube keeps 45% of my revenue? Do you think... You know, and like I hardly make videos enough anymore. The videos all get less views because I don't make enough to like keep the engagement, you know. It's like people, you know how the YouTube subscriptions work, right? Like, you know, you're not actually getting the notification for the people you subscribe to. Well, you know, I don't get an ad blocker because I know how it is when people who use ad blockers, I don't get any money from them. You know, and I don't want to do that to other people. It's okay if you use an ad blocker, you know, I understand why you would use an ad blocker, but I don't do it because I'm a moral person. No, because you're also messing with the company, and I do get that. But obviously, for my personal benefit, like, no, I don't have money, alright? I don't have money. Don't complain about the lack of YouTube Premium. Alright? But yeah.
Valiant and brave, etc., etc. Okay, some white people might be cowards or whatever, or even evil, but the black people in this novel are a faceless monolith. We don't get their perspectives, descriptions of their societies, and so, from the perspective of the heroes and the reader, they're just the bad guys. Sauron's goons. And I think that's a fine analysis. That works, that makes sense. But for me personally, it just isn't quite enough. And the reason is this single line in The Two Towers, where Samwise Gamgee, the best character, Sam wondered what the man's name was and where he came from, and if he was really evil of heart, or what lies or threats had led him on the long march from his home, and if he would rather have stayed there in peace.
Right. And this is the thing. This is the first thing people seem to have gotten wrong about the video. They seem to have made it 2 minutes and 30 seconds in, and not seen the next 15 seconds, where I say that first analysis is actually very unsatisfying, which is something that I agree with. I think just saying it's black and white, and this goes back to the question we just had here, right? This one. Because, yeah, it is very unsatisfying to just say the Haradrim are black, and then there's the white people, and there's like a split between them, you know, and Tolkien is saying that the black people are evil and the white people are good. I still think, alright, and some people pointed out in the comment, you know, there were a lot of people in the comments being like, No, it's not the one comment, Neonfire, it's not the one comment. We're gonna get to the other comments as well. We're watching the video to satisfy the comments I'm gonna talk about after this. But I just want to address this comment with this part of the video, because I think this was a very common, you know, but what I want to say is a lot of people did go, actually, I think some people commented basically, as a black person, you know, not some people basically said, you know, as a minority, as an ethnic minority, as a black person, etc. I actually think the first analysis is fine. You know, and there were some people who were also commenting, like, you know, one of the top comments in that video, I think, is like, it doesn't matter what anyone tells you. My grandma always said Frodo is black, which is a great comment. You know, I think people are allowed to have their own personal relationships with it, etc., etc. You know, this is not for me to say or dictate or anything. But I do just think there is a degree of validity to, you know, if you are just being, you know, you're like skin color, and especially in a context like America, skin color is race. Skin color is race. It's not 1-to-1, but you know what I mean. Like, it's the defining quality of race and ethnicity, and sort of all these things. And I think that it is fair to see some people of your skin color being cast as the bad ones again, as per usual, you know, and go, no, it's just racist. I just take that first analysis and that's it, you know. So I don't want to dismiss it, but I do think that it is unsatisfying. I still believe that it's unsatisfying. For this reason.
Just like that, this supposed symbol of darkness, just a goon, becomes humanized, becomes a human soldier.
I like cheese.
And then Tolkien basically never does that again. So, what is going on there? I'll tell you from the start. I do think this is racist, but I think it's racist in a weird and complicated way. This is, of course, not to say that the genre of fantasy needs to be racist.
Sorry, Rowan,
novel,
whatever.
And this video sponsor, Symphony of the Sojourn.
Okay.
Standard edition of the Middle English poem Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. In 1936, he gave some super influential lecture on Beowulf, an epic poem of Old English. He also became interested in the Germanic in general, allegedly reading the Volsunga saga in its original Old Norse while still a boy. In fact, Lord of the Rings is very inspired by the Norse myths. Just take how the names of Norse dwarfs in the Prose Edda provide Tolkien with the names of Gandalf, Dane, Durin, and most of Thorin's company, including, fun fact, the names of Thorin and Akinskjaldi as separate dwarfs. More substantially, the dwarves themselves and the elves too seem to have been based on their Norse counterparts. At the same time, we keep that English feel, especially in the Shire, where both The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings start out. I mean, it's called the Shire, like an English county. Author Tom Shippey has argued that the Shire is a calque of England, with many of their aspects corresponding 1-to-1, but with surface-level changes made to the Shire's version. I am certainly not the first to make the observation that Tolkien seems to want to construct a mythology for England.
I like that I'm transmuted onto this guy's face, right? The little character here who's supposed to be, I guess supposed to be me, and so it's good. It's good.
Completely, but in part, the world of Arda can be seen as a kind of Germanic paganism, almost filling in the gap in the national identity of the English, an attempt at a substitute for a long-lost Anglo-Saxon mythology, which we know very little about, especially compared to its cousin, Norse mythology. But we do know that the Germanic beliefs were related to one another, and here we can see where all the elements fall into place. The inspiration from the Old and Middle English epics, the slightly changed Norse mythology, the fondness for England and creating a parallel history to it. It all creates this English mythology. At this point, you have to start to wonder.
This is not me who made the. I mean, I'm not at all. Sorry, wait, wrong fucking screen. There we go. I'm not at all the first person to make that observation. Not even in the slightest.
What are the Haradrim, the black people, even doing here? There's no elephant riding Africans in Germanic mythology, right? Well, not exactly, no. The elephant riding part probably comes from somewhere else, the history of Carthage or something, but there are many mentions in ancient Germanic literature of Africa. In an old English poetic retelling of Exodus, for instance, Tolkien came across the phrase Sigelwara land, that is, the land of the Ethiops, and it's probably this that inspired Harad, a hot southern land where the people are dark-skinned, seen without its intricacies from far away, just as the Anglo-Saxons saw it. Aragorn speaks of his travels into the south, reminiscent of the mentions of adventures in Africa present in some ancient Norse poems. But see, Tolkien cannot give voice to the Haradrim. Cannot tell us of their language or their political structures, because to do so would be to gain knowledge that no Anglo-Saxon writer, no English folklore could ever have. But at the same time, they must be there in their hot land to the south, interacting with the politics of other nations with whispers and legends of them travelling northward, because Sigelwara land is mentioned in Anglo-Saxon folklore. And what if...
See, this is what I mean. This is what I think actually kind of is a good point, right? Because the fundamental thing that I'm getting at in this video is the conflict between trying to create a mythology and trying to do it in the modern day. Mordor was in London. Well, okay, this is the thing. This is what Tolkien meant by he hates allegory. This is what he meant by that. Not, I mean, I'm sure he would have hated my video too, because, you know, I'm like a woke snowflake or whatever, but like the, you know, okay, I'm sorry for being mean, you know, I'm sorry you said /J and then crying, but it's a good point though, because a lot of people do like to analyze these things that way, right? Like, oh, what country is Mordor, what country is Gondor, what is this, what is that, and I don't think that's the right way to analyze it.
Fascinating question that poses. Is this racist? Can it be racist? At the time of the literature that Tolkien is drawing upon,
I'm sorry that the subtitles are useless.
Cultures to write this way about each other. If a 10th century Saxon described distant peoples to the south who were black men like half-trolls with white eyes and red tongues, sure, that's not a flattering portrait, but what would it even mean to call that Saxon racist? That wouldn't make any sense, right? He has never seen an Ethiop, we'll never see one. There is no one to offend, and no racist structure to uphold, and no concept of race in the modern usage of the word at all. Calling this stinky Saxon racist is almost as meaningless as criticizing Star Wars because its depiction of Greedo might offend real space aliens.
Okay, so I got a comment about this as well, which I haven't included in this set of stupid comments, that I did actually reply to at the time, that was saying, it was from a black woman, American black woman, I think, going, this is racist to depict black people as literal aliens. And at the time, and I think this is kind of the natural instinct I have to this comment, is to go, that's obviously not what I'm doing. I'm obviously trying to do an allegory. Not an allegory, I'm obviously trying to do a metaphor for how this works in the mind of the Anglo-Saxon. I'm saying that for an Anglo-Saxon, a black person is a kind of alien mythology. And it's not racist in the modern sense of the word, because it's not... Do you understand what I mean, people in chat? It's not racist in the modern sense of the word because they don't think of race in the modern sense of race. There's no racial structure to correspond to that racism. However, I have come to not necessarily agree with the criticism. Like, I don't think it makes me racist to say this. I think that's a little bit too much I think that is reading this too literally. I do think my point is well enough made that I don't think this can be interpreted as racist. However, I have come to be more sympathetic to that criticism. Maybe you should be more careful, like, with the kind of metaphors that you choose, etc. I don't know. What do you people think? That's my question for the people in chat right now. What do you people think about this metaphor? Like, I guess if I'd in a video today, I don't think I would have made it. I don't think I would have said this. I don't think it's racist. I don't think it makes me racist. I don't think if I saw someone else say it, I would say it's racist. But I do also have a kind of sympathy for the fact that people can be sensitive, and I think people also kind of have a right to be sensitive, because a lot of people, especially minorities, are kind of permanently put on guard because people are constantly racist to them. And it's kind of like there's a lot of like racist dog whistles and stuff like this. And I do think this is something I've got more understanding for since the kind of... I'm not going to go into these sort of things too much, but I think it's something that I've gotten more understanding for because of my personal experience in the current climate of rising anti-Semitism. Right? Because I think I have more of an understanding of the sort of hypervigilance and almost paranoia that you develop trying to figure out if someone is being anti-Semitic because of how much anti-Semitism there is. So even though I don't agree with that criticism, I'm not saying like, I'm not bowing to the cancelling and the snowflakery. No, but I'm not. I don't actually agree with that criticism fully. I do understand more about it. Yeah. I think also just growing older and also the sort of more personal experience that the current like internet anti-Semitism, not saying that it wasn't already there at the time I made this video, but it's risen so much that you're kind of constantly trying to figure out if people are calling for the death of the Jews, man, and it's tiring, and I don't do it, but I understand the instinct to just go, that's all anti-Semitic, it's all anti-Semitic, and therefore I understand a very similar instinct that someone might have if I'm describing black people like this. Yeah, I think it's a good Slime Lord. I think it's a good rule of thumb that you should probably be more careful about like metaphors around race, because this isn't a metaphor for race. This is supposed to be a metaphor for how the Anglo-Saxon thinks about race in a time before race really exists. Hence why I don't think this is racist, but I do think it is perhaps understandable to get offended by it to an extent. The fuck is happening in Europe? What do you mean? Well, I don't want to get too much into this, but there's a country called Israel, and without wanting to offend anyone, Israel is pretty bad, and a lot of people spread the issue with Israel is that it's not just any bad country. No, Israel isn't in Europe. That's correct. Israel is in Asia. We haven't got to but the thing is, Israel is a country where the dominant ethnic group is a ethnic group called the Jews, and in Europe there's quite a lot of Jews, and they were already quite discriminated against in a lot of ways, and have historically been hated by everyone. And the thing is, the fact that Israel is bad, which it is, at least the stuff they're doing right now is unequivocally bad, and anyone who denies that is absolutely insane, has led to a genuine rise in people, because they associate that with Jews. There has been a genuine rise in anti-Semitism, which I think a lot of obviously I am mostly in like left-wing spaces, mostly among left-wing people. Left-wingers don't really like talking about this very much because they feel like it distracts from criticism of Israel, because it is sometimes used to distract from criticism of Israel as a deliberate tactic by the right and the centre. So therefore, a lot of people, they're very wary of someone just saying, "Oh, it's anti-Semitic." Because they're used to people just criticising Israel anti-Semitic, which it's not. It's not anti-Semitic to criticise Israel. It's not anti-Semitic to say that, Israel should stop what it's doing. It's not even anti-Semitic to say that Israel shouldn't be a Jewish supremacist state anymore, which it is. It's not anti-Semitic to call Israel a Jewish supremacist state, because it is that. But it is anti-Semitic to start implying a bunch of things about the Jews, which is what a lot of people do intentionally and unintentionally, and a lot of people on the left even spread a lot of very anti-Semitic propaganda, intentionally or unintentionally, or unintentionally, but they kind of know what they're saying, but they don't care enough to stop themselves from saying it. That's just to explain that, I understand the instinct to be hypervigilant about everything that everyone says online. And yeah, be careful about metaphors of race.
And Tolkien wants to write in that mythological sense. He wants to escape into the storytelling of the past. In Lord of the Rings, the main antagonists, Sauron and Saruman, are industrializing Mordor and Isengard respectively. One of the central tensions in this work is between the industrial and the new on the one hand, and the natural and the old on the other. In both the text and the metatext, Tolkien looks backwards in time towards an older age. But can he really escape the present day? When Tolkien writes of the Southerners as black men like half-trolls with white eyes and red tongues,
Stell dir vor, du erstellst eine
I'm going to fucking
App einfach.
since its release, including me, men like half-trolls with white eyes and red tongues, many of those who have read it since its release, including me, instantly go, that's uncomfortable, that is racist. And isn't that tragic? That no matter how much Tolkien wants to create a mythology and hark back to the olden days, what we see as modern people reading a modern writer is only a reflection of our modern conception of race. But just for the sake of the argument, what if we just let him get away with it? We go, yes, John, you can LARP as an Anglo-Saxon myth writer. This is you now. Yes, it complicates things that you made not one, but two groups of faraway non-white people the antagonists of your book.
It's funny, it's funny.
Smarty-eyed beastalings that also team up with Sauron. But we can say here, it's a myth. The ideas of race don't apply. We only see these peoples through the eyes of those who don't understand them, don't know their cultures. They could have a million kingdoms, have rebellions against Sauron, and civil wars, all the complexities that are laid out when it comes to the lands west of Mordor, but those can't be spoken about, because this isn't their mythology. This story is not about them. And again, we see that Lord of the Rings is only as racist as you read it to be.
And this is the second analysis, right? Which, if people had stopped here instead at 10 minutes in, then they wouldn't have been commenting the previous stuff. But I think this is interesting literary analysis. I'm pretty proud of this twist.
And it's a single line in the Two
Two
Towers.
Towers, and then I repeat the same line, right? Which is really clever. It's like a whole thing, right? Like I repeat the line from the start that started the whole debate, and then oh look, it's the same line. It's the same line, but the same line is the issue as for the other debate. It's good. It's clever.
Horrors of war, but he also showed in real life anti-racist sentiments. And in
See, I even say that he showed anti-racist sentiments in real life. KVD. So with the Haradrim and Eastern revolutions led by the Blue Wizards, later in his life, this stuff is like so over-exaggerated by people who want to excuse everything Tolkien ever wrote. Later in his life, he did absolutely. He wrote in letters, I think, to his son. He suggested that the Blue Wizards were stirring up and helping stir up revolution and resistance against Sauron. And he says there were probably heroes in the East and the South who were like, who absolutely contributed to the fall of Mordor, because without them, then, thousands more would have marched in, and the whole battle, like Minas Tirith, would have fallen, etc. There were other people down the line, but these were kind of semi-developed ideas, and they're not in the text. They're not in the text, and this is textual analysis. It's not death of the author. I'm not going that far. Look, this video is a lot about what Tolkien wants, Tolkien's sort of views, and we're not looking at the text outside of its context. It's definitely a contextual reading of the text, but I am looking at the text itself and the things leading up to it, rather than stuff that he said later in life.
He can rehumanize both the enemy and the dark-skinned other, an opportunity he can't help but take. But see, this moment is so irrefutably modern, and it occurs when...
And this is the other thing people misunderstand, because so many people seem to have thought that when I called this modern, that I was saying that Sam's empathy is modern. I don't find Sam's empathy modern, and if you watch a few more seconds of the video, you'll understand.
Directly talking about the Haradrim, so there's no possible mental separation between the two. No, suddenly the internal conflicts within the writing of this tale are laid bare. The Lord of the Rings is not an Anglo-Saxon epic. It may apply many aspects of older texts, such as interlacing, but it applies these to a modern format, the novel. And in the modern novel, we often see the world through characters. We get to experience Sam's perspectives and thoughts in sort of real time.
The point is that Beowulf does not do this. This kind of speculation does not typically occur in the text he's drawing.
And indeed, Tolkien's own previous work, where authors describe their characters' emotions the same way they describe a city or a forest. The novel asks the author to create characters, people, not just heroes. What better way to make Sam human than to give him these intricate thoughts? And ironically, it leaves this gaping hole in us. In the end, for me, it is this humanizing moment that ruins the illusion of a raceless story, because we are confronted with the fact here that the Haradrim are not human in the same way Sam is. Our white characters have been modernized, taken to an extent, out of their mythological context, but these dark-skinned southerners are trapped as ancient caricatures.
And I think that's clever. I think, it is a bit... Like, I get that it's a bit of woke fuckery, right? Like, it's a bit of... fucked up, some fucked up literary criticism from what, I do get that. But, any comments? Anything you want to say about that? Because I do think that it's, I do think it's a fair analysis. And the point, remember, it is obvious if you watch the whole thing and don't comment halfway through, but yeah, no, the point is that the way that the character is written, the way that this empathy is written, if you compare it to something like Beowulf, if you compare it to something like the Silmarillion, is very different. I'm not saying that these emotions are modern, I'm saying that the way of describing them with this kind of limited third person sort of... Like, it's very rare in Beowulf that you get a long, limited third-person section in which you are going via a character to empathise with another character. That doesn't typically happen. I'm not putting any euros in the Schimpfwortbehälter. Who do you think I am? But this does not typically happen in older texts, and I think it does kind of ruin the illusion of it being a mythological text, of it being a myth for England, because it's not just a myth for England. It is a novel. It is a novel with novel characters, with characters from a novel, and the characters are all white, and this is what I mean, right? There's a difficulty there. There's a tension there in the text with the fact that the Westerners, the white characters, get to be characters, whereas the black people just get to be caricatures. And the way in which they are written about is through the lens of an old text. But see, this is what this commenter is getting at, and this is what I don't think. This is what I think is a common misunderstanding of this video, which is, Sam was voicing the same thoughts as any human in war would when regarding their enemy. You yourself have read this through the modern lens, ignoring Sam's thoughts as thought is universal human thought during such an event in any time period. I do think it speaks to a universal thought, and that's also why it's such a good moment. I also think that's why it's so brilliant. It's part of why Tolkien is such a brilliant writer. Absolutely. That being said, you just wouldn't see it written like this in what's it called, the story of the Nordic story of the guy who goes to Africa, the Suda the Stool, something, I can't remember, but I read it as research for this video anyway, in modern, I think I read it in the Swedish, a modern Swedish translation. And it doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. I'm not saying that these aren't universal human emotions. I'm saying that it's not a universal historical way of writing about these emotions. Thank you for saying it's an interesting analysis. I don't think it's like the only possible analysis to have. I just think, Exactly. Only in modern time. It's not just in modern times, though, but only in the format of the modern novel. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fact that it's the novel. Right. Okay. We have a paragraph. Personally, I see absolutely nothing racist about any of it. Tolkien's works have certain influences and used various inspirations to find out a specific argument based on superficialities is foolish. And this is what I mean about the allegory, right? This is not. I'm not. So he's saying here, this commenter. Yeah, I know the bells are back. Yes, I live with this every day of my life. Every day of my goddamn life. So the criticism is all about the way the story is presented by one-sided perspectives. Okay, so it's not. Sorry. It's not necessarily about it being a one-sided perspective. That's not necessarily what I'm not necessarily criticizing, but critiquing or analyzing. It's the fact that the type of third-person limited perspective being used and the way in which we see third-person limited perspective empathizing with another character, we see this kind of almost like this sort of recursive structure of like the third-person, like this kind of this long thinking about and sort of thoughts about a different character in the text, we barely, a minor character, and these sort of complex emotional thoughts being expressed through Sam's eyes is very indicative of the modern novel. And the point is that Sam is kind of modernized, and that's also what's really good about Lord of the Rings, is that it's like this mythology, but it's also a novel. It is also a novel with characters like Sam and Frodo. But the it's not so much criticism, but the I'm not sure how he would have done it otherwise and still made Lord of the Rings. It's just that, I think this is honestly just one of the biggest problems with Tolkien's attempts to merge a modern novel with something in the style of Beowulf or the Germanic sagas, myths. Really, this is my point, right? This is a tension that exists because he's not modernizing the Haradrim in the same way. They're stuck in the way that they would have been in a Germanic saga. And I think, how else would you do that without sacrificing one of these two elements? How, you kind of have to sacrifice one of these two elements to make it purely non-racist. And that's difficult to do. That's very difficult to do. You live with yelling Muslims coming from the masjid. Thing is, right, if we had calls to prayer here, the people would fucking riot. And yet, this is fine. This is considered absolutely normal. Call to prayer isn't even that loud compared to this, alright? This is fucking... Sorry. I don't want the fucking the Schimpfwort Behälter to get too full. Yes, okay, I understand that if there's a lot of people shouting, it can be loud. I get that it can get pretty loud. But my point is still, it's a similar level, okay? And I get that because Muslim countries are often more Muslim than Christian countries are Christian. Often, not always, but often. I get that, the bells are a bit more limited in a lot of Christian countries. Not really in Germany, but... Well, even in Germany, they're a bit more limited than they once were. You live in India. Well, I guess even so, right? Like, if you live in a Muslim community in India, I guess... I don't know. Like, I guess the Christian communities in India are very religious... tend to be pretty religious as well, though. They tend to be very, like... But still, my point is just... I do live very close to a church. Yeah, they ring for 10 fucking minutes at a time, alright? They ring for 10 minutes at a time. Yeah, Carol, but... Yeah, a lot of people... I some of my best friends are Carolite Christians. But... The point was just, it was just a joke, alright? It was just a joke. I was just saying that the Germans would lose their minds if they had to listen to the call to prayer, and yet this is considered not disturbing the peace. Alright, that's all I'm saying, please. What are you gonna do? Crucify me? That was a Christianity joke, see? It is fun. Alright, but this person is talking about the allegory, right? He's talking about... There is no allegory. You should not be picking out allegory. This is not a catch-all. This is really not the slam dunk that people think it is. That, Tolkien said you shouldn't look at allegory in his story. Firstly, even if he said so, that doesn't mean that there aren't... They often go on for more than 10 minutes, to be fair. Well, yeah, the clocks are they just go on for fucking ever. Yeah, sometimes the bells go on for like half an hour. If it's a special day. But, not every day. My point is here, though, that this allegory point is not that good, because, some people... You're allowed to analyse something in a way that the author didn't intend it. If the allegory's there, then... Well, it's not an intentional allegory, but if the parallels are there, then that's too bad. The author should have thought about that, especially if they're very obvious parallels, like the fact that the black people are black and the white people are white. But the other point is, this is not really what allegory means. I'm not saying here that they're an allegory for anything else. I'm rather analysing tensions in the text. Allegory is not the same thing. This is kind of like... Well, I guess, this is a copy-paste response that someone who really likes defending Tolkien against Tolkien detractors will paste on everything. It has actually nothing to do with my video, right? It has nothing to do with the video we just watched together. And yeah, no, there's a lot of comments like that. Then we get to this comment, you know, personally I'm disappointed, did you even research Tolkien's belief? I did say that Tolkien had anti-racist beliefs in real life. I actually think that Lord of the Rings is more racist than Tolkien himself was, by quite a big margin. Tolkien himself had quite a lot of anti-racist, showed quite a lot of anti-racist sentiments. So, but I mean, you know, this person at the end said, nice video. I'm not criticizing this person, you know, they compliment me, I compliment them. I just think that, you know, and it is definitely more complicated. There are white people who are absolutely villainous in Tolkien, etc. In Tolkien, sorry. But I don't think that this video is the, if there aren't many non-white protagonists, then it's racist. I don't think that's what I'm saying. There are no non-white protagonists, firstly. Correction, it's not many, it's none. And secondly, I think that's not really the point. The point is not the lack of them, but rather the fact that you have a set of black people who but can we really categorize it as racist if we know that originally there were no racist intentions? This is a very good question, and it depends on how you define racist. I think, yes. I think you can. I think a text can still have a racist sentiment that it exists within it, even if it was not written with conscious racism. I think systems can have a racial bias even without sorry, the racist systems can have a racial bias. That systems can have a racial bias, can be racist even without anyone intentionally going, let's construct a system that's going to be racist now. Even though that does happen quite a lot, actually. But theoretically, you can say this. And I do think that it's worth it to analyze the media that we What do you mean by taking this video is not a bad idea? I don't think it's really my fault if people misunderstand it, which is what I thought a long time, but then I rewatched the video. This is why we rewatched the video together. I think it's actually kind of obvious what I'm getting at. See, now this next set of bells have started. That's actually a different set of bells, so, you know. But still, no, I don't think it's... you know, I think you can... I think you can say that something is racist without it being overtly racist or intentionally racist, because I think it's interesting to analyze the media that we consume and think about the way the messages that are being taken from it. But then you get to the outright rejection. Then you get to the outright rejection of what I'm saying. No critical engagement with it whatsoever. No, it is not. End off. No, not racist, but a sign of its era, a reflection of what was. Why dwell on it? It's a timeless story of good versus evil, and if ethnicity is still a trigger to you, then don't watch. It's a book, but yes, okay. I guess you watch a book, you know, you can look at it, see if it moves. I see good versus evil, not white against black, but then I tend to see behaviour, not colour. Make the same baddies some colour that's not associated with some ethnicity, maybe green, or will that trigger some tree lover? Yeah, but I'm not talking about the films though, am I? The films are more racist. Sorry, no. The films come out after, you know, certain events in American history and or in, you know, in Anglo world history, and I think they, you know, yeah. Although it is, Lord of the Rings is a story from one perspective, and I think there's a difficulty that comes with that. There's a tension that comes with the fact that it's a story from one perspective, when that perspective is kind of racialized. There is a border that goes with the Dark Lord southwards and eastwards, where you get the black and the brown and the non-white people. And I think it's fine for a story to have limited perspectives, I do, but I think that I don't think we can ignore the fact. I don't think we can ignore the fact that it is a racialized perspective. I guess if there were some other color, I guess it would not be racist. But I think this is like, I guess if there was no race in the story, it wouldn't be racist. I guess that's true. Very good. And now we get to the next level of comment. Oh bloody hell! It's not racism. Tolkien literally loved the Jewish people and sent in a snarky letter to the Nazis. It was a shame he didn't descend from those people. There's just so much confirmation bias in this. Please just stop. I don't think that the winner's perspective is the only story that is the only perspective all stories have. I don't think that's true. This is brilliant. Yeah, I love this comment. I think this is great. I don't really know how to analyze it. I think, but I guess that it did just, Flying Cotsman did just kind of destroy my entire argument. Tolkien did literally love the Jewish people. It's funny how you start with an agenda and then work backwards to find evidence for it. Very true, my agenda being to cancel Tolkien. So what we're saying is that even though we don't accuse the writer of being racist, but he still managed to subconsciously make the readers also subconsciously get a racist view perspective. Kind of. Yeah. Kind of. Like, he has a racialized perspective of the world, I guess the thing is, Anglo-Saxon myths don't have race. Right? They have various peoples, but they don't have race in the modern way. However, Tolkien is writing at a time at which race does exist, and applying these past groups and past distinctions into the present racializes them, especially when you are writing in the form of a modern novel. You are actively modernizing the thing. You can't you can't stray away from the fact that we've partially modernized the work, right? And yeah, I do think that there's to an extent a racist subtext that can be picked up on and that can influence us, not on its own. If Lord of the Rings was the only piece of media that was like this, then, there would be no issue. I think a lot of the time when we talk about, like, racism or whatever, I think the issue is that when we're trying to analyse media, we don't like thinking about the fact that there are big societies built around these pieces of media. And the fact of the matter is, you can have a story that is where everyone who's black is bad and everyone who's white is good, and that doesn't make it necessarily a racialized story, apart from the fact that we live in a racialized society. And so it kind of, and the fact that and my point is the tension in about the tension of the work is the fact that Tolkien draws attention to the modernized, racialized society by drawing attention to the modern element of his story directly when he's talking about these people of other cultures, but he doesn't give that sort of modern type of agency and empathy, like that sort of written empathy to the Haradrim. And I do think it can affect us subconsciously, and I do think that is something that is worth analysing, again, not on its own, but in a system, in a whole if every piece of media is like this, or if there's a substantial set of media that has these kinds of tropes. This is not really. I don't really have an agenda, though, But yeah, I think even if readers didn't get a racist perspective from it, I don't think I got a racist perspective from reading Lord of the Rings. I still think there is that perspective in there, and clearly some people who are racist. Clearly, some people who are racist like Lord of the Rings quite a lot, and maybe there's some reasons for that. For instance, Tolkien was a man of the early 20th century. If you judge him by modern woke values, you are merely being a fool. Anyway, have you seen some of them coming off the small boats? Woke, he said woke, yeah. True. Might be too overthought, but based on what you said, what if Tolkien indirectly tried to convey an anti-racist message to critical thinkers? I think we're playing too many degrees of 4D chess. Yeah, sorry, then we get into the next genre of Lord of the Rings comment, which is, Tolkien wasn't racist, but I am. This is, yeah. You shouldn't judge him by the modern values, but, the people coming off the boats, they kind of are like that. You get, call it racist. In life, much of it is proved true. You call it racist, that's okay. But you better call it real too, because you know it is. What's real? The fucking Haradrim? See, this is what I mean. We cannot separate it from a racialized context because people know that the Haradrim are black people. People know that the Easterlings are the people of the East, or Haradrim, black, brown, non-white people, right? Yeah, racist misspelt, of course. That's funny. He lost the internet argument. But do people understand what I mean? That clearly, to a lot of people, there is a racialized element here, very, very clearly, because they are able to identify that which is happening in Lord of the Rings is happening today, which means that they are able to identify that the Haradrim are non-white people. Oh yeah, and then we have this exchange. Who had a moment? Someone had a gamer moment, yeah. Is it weird that Tolkien implemented these things when you consider all the brutal invasions into Europe there have been by Easterlings? It's the same thing! It's an odd way to say I don't know anything about European history. And the answer is, I am literally European. And I have researched European history for all my life. If I am wrong, then give an actual explanation for your argument's sake. Were not Iberia a European land conquered for 800 years by Moorish Muslim invaders? Yeah, the European nationalist, the username it does check out. Were not Byzantium lost to invaders from the east, and is till this day still not reclaimed? We have protected ourselves from invaders for centuries, so I don't think it's strange at all that Tolkien depicted these people as brutish and evil. Amen. Yeah, I mean... Wait, is this profile... Wait, sorry, is this just a literal Nazi? I mean, obviously it's a Nazi, but... Oh, it is! Oh, look at that profile picture. Oh, lovely. It's great to Sweden. It's great to Sweden. It's big Germany. It's big Germany. Lovely. Someone bring up the map of the places colonized by Europe. Iberian Union, yeah. Oh yeah, Big Belarus. That was Big Belarus right there. Stop overanalyzing the video. This is my stream. I can do what I want. No, yeah. The point is, this is the final phase of this kind of thought. I'm not saying everyone I disagree with who disagrees with me is this. As I said, there were some more reasonable disagreements that I had towards the beginning, but I do think that you kind of get this progression, and that you end up with people who clearly do see it as a racialized story. I mean, that comment specifically, I don't really know what else to say about it. I mean, you know, I'm sorry, but if the invaders were there for 800 years, you know, and like, sorry, if the invaders were there for like 800 years, the invaders, and integrated into the society, then I'm sorry, but Islam is just a European religion. Islam has been in Europe for fucking ages. And, you know, it's obvious what it means for something to be conquered away from you. It means non-white people. Yeah. Have I come into contact with Low Saxon? Like, Low Saxon as in the old meaning of the word, like as in the ancestor of Low German? As in, like, or Low Saxon as in the... Oh, sorry, that's called Old Saxon, isn't it? As the ancestor of Low German, and Low Saxon is, what, a dialect group? Low Saxon, also known as West Low German, are a group of Low German dialects. I see. I mean, I guess so. I guess I have come into contact. Low Saxon is a form of Plattdeutsch. Well, I guess I have, yeah. I mean, not much of it. I've not done that much. I've not had that much Plattdeutsch, but anyway, yeah. I'll answer a couple more questions from the original set, and then I will slowly wrap up stream. I actually have to leave. I have to go to. I have an event to go to. What do you have against the Midlands? I don't have anything against the Midlands. Then I have to do French with my girlfriend. I have to help my girlfriend with French, and then I need to go to an event. I don't have anything against the Midlands. This was just that I joked in my video about Manga that the Midlands is the most hated part of England. I don't think this is incorrect. I think this is actually just true, like, sociologically. I'm not saying that I hate the Midlands. I love the Midlands. I think I think they're wonderful, but I mean, people from the Midlands hate the Midlands. All right, I don't think it. You know, I don't think I was wrong on this one. One of the most beautiful languages I've heard of. I see comments about the culture of your Conwald. Whatever inspired the subordinate form of participants. It's a feature I'd love to be able to use in my own language. Yeah, live in a shell, exactly right. You know, so, what inspired the subordinate form is a very good question, and like most things in conlang, it's a solution to a problem that I had, which was, the problem was I don't want prepositions or complementizers. I did end up adding things that could be analysed as complementizers. Generativists definitely would analyse as complementizers. You're not allowed to send links. You can't send links unless you're an admin. But so I wanted to find a way to distinguish subordinate clauses. I experimented with this, and then I realised that it meant you could split subordinate clauses in a very neat way, so then I kept it. What does le mean? There's actually an explanation for this in the Archipelagon video at the very end of it. So if you watch that, you will see what le means. Okay. Why? Okay, and yes, and here we have two comments right next to each other. Why is there a perfect circle island south of the continent of Mayend? I love comments and all. I couldn't focus on anything other than why do you have a perfect circle on your map? It's probably larger than my country. Okay. Here we go. What's being referred to as this circle here. This circle is the Isle of Darkness. Alright, it's a perfect circle because the White Wraith, the God of Order, pulled up an island of exactly this size from the surface of the ocean and made the Wraithland with it, which is a moving island that flies around, and it's exactly the same size, and it moves around and, phases in and out of the land masses, etc. A little bit later, this island then emerges from the gap left in the world, and it's kind of like a shadow of the Wraithland. It's fixed in the place where the Wraithland was took this island out, whereas the other island is free, and this is where the darkness has its point of origin, has its home, from which it then mostly messes things up for people in the various eras of the world. 5 times in the era of the Solid, that's the 5th darkness, but it came many, many times before that as well in each of the previous eras. But it comes very rapidly and very brief. The era of the Solid is very, very short, and yet it comes very, very many times within a very small amount of time. Just 20,000 years or something comes 5 times, and that's very, very quick. Relative, maybe even faster than that. Actually, now that I think about it, probably even faster than that. It's probably comes like 5 times within 12 to 15,000 years or something, which is very, very fast. So the Solid that have dark hearts, etc. And also some of the ones are just directly the Solid's fault. Like they release the seal on the darkness. They try to use the darkness for various stuff. The humans and stuff, they just kind of suck. Why are there so many islands? Yeah, that's another question that I get a lot. This is the Great Archipelago, also formed during a war with the darkness. A lot of this stuff is a war between the darkness and some of the spirits that allied with it versus the wraiths and dragons and some of the spirits that allied with them. Some of these island chains, like this one here, the Pentatox, are literally caused by seismic battles under the water where they were smashing the tectonic plates into each other to fight. A lot of this is a continent that was literally carved up and split apart by the ferocity of the fighting. This was all one continent that was attached to this continent previously, in previous eras. But the Anticipation War, as it's called, the last war with the darkness before humans come along. So it existed before humans came along. This one is different. So here, this is a fairly normally formed island stuff. I think some of this is like the way Indonesia formed, like glacial thawing and sea level rising and this kind of shit. I'm not a geologist, so just bear with me. And some of this I think is like continent splintering, right? This was originally part of this continent, and it's like various sea level rising and erosion and shit like that, right? This stuff, and also Huendoa, and also some of these islands here, the reason they're like that, to realise why they're like that, you need to look at this other map. which is a map that includes the Great Crystals, which I mentioned earlier as like a kind of fundamental force in this world. So this, I think this one's called the Labolija. I wouldn't quote myself on it though, but I'm not sure who else would be there to say that you're wrong, but I'm pretty sure this is the Labolija. This is one of the Great Crystals. That's the distribution of them across the world. I know these two continents don't get any, so it's kind of sad. Even as the continents have drifted and moved, the Great Crystals have stayed exactly in place. So this continent is actually was here, it's closer to here, and it drifted. And as it drifts through this crystal, the power of this crystal literally splinters and splits up this continent. Huendua flies off with force. These islands break off. These are just the big lakes marked on. This is like a series of marshes and waterways where the land has been like churned up. Some of it's reformed, some of it, but like it's like splintered and destroyed because it's the continent, but the force of the continent breaking apart as it's going through this crystal. So there you go. That's why there's so many islands. All right. I didn't draw this map. I did not draw this map. My artist drew this map. He draws everything. He makes everything that looks, I mean, I put the marked where the crystals are on. But he draws everything. I'm not responsible for anything. Ooh, this is a very, very good question. But I think this is going to be the last question, unless anyone has direct questions in chat. And then I'm going to make myself on my way. I think that was very Denglish. I don't think you can say that in English, can you? I'm going to mach mich auf den Weg. Okay, I will answer your question in Discord. Just because you've been so eager the whole stream. Okay, well, I don't really know anything what you're... Did I come up with the lore first, or did I add islands first? I guess good question. There were some islands there, then I came up with the lore, then I decided, there's going to be so many more islands. I think that's the order it happened in on the west side. On the east side, I think I just decided it's going to look like that, and then I had to find a justification. But on the west side, I think if you look at earlier maps that I made when I was younger, it's much more like it's like Caribbean with a Central America. It's based on it's based on our world, the map originally, and then slowly moved away from our world as I grew older. But there was no connecting between them anymore. And there was kind of like a set of islands, and then the islands kind of became more prominent, became a bigger archipelago, and I decided, this is going to be like a thing. Ja, tschüss. Tschüss. Ich liebe dich auch. The one above the mini Kyoto. Yes, I already answered that question. But I don't like pineapple on pizza. Naja, gut. Ich gehe auch gleich los. Dass ein paar Minuten warten können, aber nee, okay, alles gut. But yes, is there a need? So this is I mark. So I say that Chet always stresses the following vowel. And no, it is not marked with a haka afterwards. This is about the script of the... this is about the manga script. And... I don't really have... I don't... Oof. So, yeah, this haka is this underlining that you have in some words. So, if you write like, well, the way haka is written, right? Haka. you have this underlining, and that makes it a ha, or it adds emphasis in a word like gepet rather than gepet. But after a cha is not required to write. After a che, even, it's not required to write a haka afterwards to show emphasis, even if it's later in the word, like the word acha, which is that or this. It's a demonstrative pronoun. This syllable is emphasized, but you do not write a haka on it. And if you have two, there's very rarely two in one word. It's extremely rare to have a haka and a che. If it does exist, the haka takes precedence, but basically non-emphasized che has in the history of the language become a t. So there's very, in almost all cases, so there's very few words that actually contain double che or haka plus che. Ja, tschüss. Es war auch sehr nett, dass du dabei warst. And then we have we do have like one word that I think it's just like one word that actually tschüss, that actually has both, which is this cha-cha, which means that thing over there. And, you know, that there, it's a combination of cha-cha. So it's a fairly new word, and here you see that the first syllable gets emphasized. So the emphasis, you know, it gets prioritized. The first syllable, the first syllable gets prioritized. Yeah. So that was. Hello? Okay, well, you know, yeah. There we go. What you missed was that I'm about to leave. I was just saying, you know, it's been very fun to have the stream. I might do this more regularly in the future. By more regularly, I mean once every, like, 2 months, rather than once every 2 years. But you know, you don't actually have to stay up the entire time I'm streaming. You can just go to bed. But okay, but yes, it's been fun. It's been fun to explore these things. I didn't get through all the questions that I wanted that I had. I didn't realize that people in chat would have so many questions. I didn't realize that I would have so much to say about so much stuff. So, I will, you know, be on my way to have dinner now. With a friend. So, tack. So, goodbye, farewell, good night, and you know, good afternoon to the people in over in the United States, I think.